Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of Strong Communities, our last meeting before Christmas. So, first of all, I would like to thank my committee for their hard work this year, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'd like to thank our two support staff, Hazel and Paula, for all their hard work this year. So, thank you both, and I wish you both a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Officers, the same to you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from the Select Committee. And members, thank you for all your time, and I wish you a Happy New Year. Okay, let's make a start. I do have a busy morning, so we'll start with apologies for absence, and then we'll go to Part A. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies this morning from Councillor Sue White.
Okay, thank you. And that leaves Councillor Watts. Okay. And no apologies from Councillor Jordan. All right, thank you. Right, Part A, Scrutiny and Crime Disorder Matters. We don't have any on the agenda this morning. Right, Part B, Declarations of Interest, as and when members. Yep, okay. Agenda item number 3, Open Public Forum. Good morning, sir. Here's your opportunity. And your name is?
It's Peter Sutherland, representing the Woodside residents.
Okay, Mr. Sutherland.
Appreciate your comment about the length of the agenda, so I will try and keep it as brief as possible for you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Sutherland.
Good morning.
You've come here to discuss
2 or 3 issues, if I could.
You fire away, and I'll
thank
give
you very much indeed.
To do that.
Would welcome an update on the speeding issues in Woodside. Found the minutes again of the Strong Communities meeting a little inadequate, if I'm allowed to say that. Apologies to the minute taker. But we don't seem to be getting anywhere very fast, no pun intended. We had the presentation by Mr. and Mrs. Vincent last time out, and I'm hoping in 5 years' time I won't be here complaining similarly as they did. We don't seem to be getting anywhere very fast, and we'd like to know what is happening, when it's going to happen, and who is going to do it. Thank you.
Right. Now, when you say we're not getting anywhere very fast, is that with your problems that you have within Woodside, or is this a general problems reference to the strategy of road speed and safety?
I think we're being selfish, and it's specific to Woodside, and I think our concern is that meeting after meeting goes on, but nothing actually seems to happen, and we're getting a bit frustrated. I don't think the minutes last time out did give any real credence to that frustration that we're feeling. There seems to be a lack of contact for us, and all the comments made by the Vincents are sadly being borne out as far as Woodside is concerned. I got an impression at the meeting last month that the members were really taking it on board and were concerned about the issues that we were raising. We're not necessarily seeing the evidence of that. We appreciate you have other priorities. We appreciate how busy you all are. But there seems to be a lack of feedback to us. We're just feeling that we're just being marginalised, and we don't want that to happen, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Roger, would you like to comment on that? Because I need to explain that we don't pursue issues. We're here to make sure that policy and strategy and everything else is in place and scrutinise all them processes. But I will address that, and I'm sure Roger will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Sutherland. Since that last meeting, I think I may have mentioned it at the last meeting, but we have convened a meeting with us Town Council, the and Lambaddock Community Council, the county councillors for those regions, and the cabinet member, along with an expert consultant and Gwent Police, to look at and we spent half a day, I think, looking at options around design works to improve the management of traffic, I'll put it that way, in Usk and in Woodside as well. So since that meeting, others have been charged with going away and looking at doing further work to put together schemes. So I appreciate the frustration. I do recall at one of the meetings there was an offer to put money on the table for a average speed scheme. We haven't actively pursued that. I have looked at it and done some research on it, but we haven't pursued that at the moment, considering that this redesign may be a better long-term alternative then. It doesn't preclude the other scheme, but I think it would be quite different in how we seek to manage traffic. We've had various traffic orders there, and we've had several years of frustration around trying to manage those traffic orders. So we're looking at taking this on in a completely different way now. So we have engaged with community councillors, town councillors, and local county councillors to take that forward.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Mr Sutherland, are you happy with what you've just heard from the senior officer reference to your issues that you have in Woodside there?
In a sense, yes and no, because it doesn't answer the fundamental question about timescale, who is actually responsible, when it will happen, and who will do the work. Appreciate there's a long way to go on that. I do acknowledge that. But I think we would welcome rigorous feedback. Could I raise the issue, are you, through you, Chair, is there reference to the task and finish group? Is that what's being alluded to? Because I understand that there's a task and finish group being set up, and we would welcome some participation in that if that is possible and appropriate, and some comment about terms of reference for that group, its timescale, its membership, etc., would be most helpful to us, because it would give us at least an impression that things are happening and things are moving on. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, just to inform everyone that we hopefully will be having our first meeting next week to sort out terms of reference. That'll be next week. Reference to your comments about where it's going to go, I think the main aim of the group is to set out the strategy of road safety and speed, and I think from that, the impression I do have from members and officers is we're looking to put a package together which will help the frustrations that people do feel they have when they want to bring things forward, like the matters of speed and safety, etc. We will possibly be looking for an appeals process as well, because everybody's not going to get what they want because it may not meet the criteria. So we're looking at but we have to build that into a policy and a strategy, and that's very important. But we understand, and we do acknowledge that there are frustrations out there with many schemes that are in place that haven't been delivered for whatever reason, and hopefully with officers' time and support we can try and drive some of them forward. But there are many ones, not just the schemes that we have been brought to us as a select committee. I know there's many out there. I've just got one member who wants to speak on this, and I'll let you come back in. Val?
Thank you, Chairman. As the local member for Woodside, I think what's really raised the issue is the fact that Woodside was completely excluded from any sort of speed restriction or looking seriously at the issues. Something that's been ongoing for years. I'm personally not aware of any initiatives that have been taken to curtail the speed of traffic travelling through Woodside. Woodside starts, for those who don't know, where the Usk sign announces just down the road. So I'm not aware of any initiatives. It's been an issue that's gone on for years. There was a speed sign that blinked. That's been removed a few weeks ago. I did ask who had removed it and why, but I haven't had a response. So I think the residents have every entitlement. They live an extremely unsafe life there. And that we as a council can tolerate a gentleman who has to cross that road in a wheelchair. How he survives, I do not know. So I personally look forward to some action in the near future.
Yeah, could I just bring you back in there? You wanted to come back in, sir? You're fine, are you?
Apologies. Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Smith has answered or has followed up on exactly the issues I was going to follow up on.
So I think the frustrations that members of the public of Monmouthshire have and members as well about a way forward hopefully will come out in the strategy, that the timescales will have to be adhered to, and if they're not, there'll have to be good explanations why. And as I said previous, that there may be a possibility that within that, which we may be looking for, is a process of appeal as well, because everything's not going to be hunky-dory and being delivered. So we'll be looking at putting something in place which will fulfil everything, because it's very time-consuming, as you know. Roger, have we any ideas when we can look at Woodside in delivering a project there? Is it going to be in the spring, or are we talking late summer? When? Have you any ideas, or you're not too sure yet?
In relation to the much broader scheme which we looked at when we met with various councillors and various other officers and an expert consultant, that is some years away, because funding will have to be found for it, and it is a major change. If indeed we follow that route, it's a complete change in the whole streetscape. The whole thing is changed to allow the pedestrian, I think, is probably, or empower the pedestrian to make it what they call shared space, which doesn't get the best of press all of the time, but I think is understood by most people that we're trying to empower people to allow them to work, to live in that street the same as the vehicles do. It isn't easy in Esk or on Woodside, but that is some years off. As I say, we haven't followed up on the offer, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I do remember the offer about looking at average speed cameras, although I have done some research on that personally to see whether or not it is feasible. But the speed limits are in place. I can raise with the police about increased enforcement and some initiatives there. I'm quite happy to do that.
Okay, but I don't think years away is satisfactory, is it, to be honest with you? I mean, if it's been highlighted and we seem to have that desire to move this forward and having meetings with bodies, etc., like, I mean, surely you're talking about a large scheme here then, are you? A very large scheme.
Yeah, the extent of the scheme could be this early days, but it could well be through Woodside, right up through Usk Town, right to the far end, out towards past the school and out through there. Complete new design. It may be done in stages, but it is early days. We've met to try and gauge the views of the relevant members at an early stage to see whether or not there's a wish to pursue this further, or do we revert to looking at the traffic orders and enforcement, which I'd have to say has been difficult. That's more in Esk, I'd say, rather than Woodside, and I believe more straightforward enforcement may well be feasible within Woodside, and I can raise that with the local police.
Okay, thanks. I've got Anne. Councillor
Yes,
Webb.
Chairman, thank you. Let's be clear that there are other areas which are just as important as Woodside. We've got particularly Tinton on the A466, and we've also, Sarah has also mentioned, I think we need to discuss this as a whole. And just one thing while we're on that subject, is it possible to mention the road numbers in the minutes, please? Because not everybody would know where Nick Vincent had his campaign. I know where it was, but not everybody did. If we could have the road numbers for each of those, please. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Okay, I have said that on many points within the Select Committee. We're here to look at strategy and build strategy and scrutinise policy, etc. When members from the public come here with desires and with problems, it is valuable that we take them forward and make sure that we scrutinise their concerns. I think what we have in Woodside is, personally, is my own view is going to be a long way off, and I'd like an explanation, to be honest with you. Are there any measures we can put in bar, i.e. Councillor Smith's made it very clear that signs have been removed this week or in the last few weeks. Where are they? They're there for a reason, so can we make sure that the measures are put back in there, Roger? They may be broken, something may have happened, but they are important, because if we've highlighted as an area that needs some major works, to even take some of the safety aspects away, it might mean a small spend to actually just implement what we already had there, or even enhance that for the time being. Where can you find out what's happened there with them speed signs, etc.?
It's very quickly, Mr. Chairman. If the sign's been taken down, it's because it's faulty. We wouldn't have taken it down for any other reason. There would be no reason around that. And there are speed limits in place. It's the enforcement which maybe needs some more work done on it. So I will raise it with Gwent Police. If we were to look at physical measures, then that's another step again, because then you were into features on the road, and it probably perhaps not a debate for today in the public forum, with the public at some point, perhaps not now, in all the pros and cons about putting in physical features on through routes, I'd have to say, because we have had experience of that elsewhere.
Okay, thanks. Val, last one on this, and sorry, David.
Very briefly, Chairman, I have a lot of sympathy for our officers and trying to do their job. If I hear the police again say to me, it's too dangerous for us to monitor it there, Councillor, I think I'll scream.
Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just thinking about Roger saying that the average speed schemes, as we spoke about them at the last meeting, are not appropriate, and I can see the difficulties with that. But the thing that does concern me is about the larger scheme that Roger has suggested is the way ahead. We don't have any idea of what that is, even a broad aspect, and neither do our local people have any idea of what it is, what is envisaged, etc. Really, all I'm saying is, if we're going to get this thing moving, it is as well that when this scheme is coming forward, that we take the local residents along with us from the word go. Because it is no use us doing a shed load of work and then presenting it to the local residents, and they saying, well, this really doesn't meet what we want. We still have problems with what you're proposing. So really, all I'm saying is, if we are going to move into a scheme which is going to take some time, then I think what we should ensure is that the residents are in at the front end of it and are carried through, so that we don't find ourselves in a position where we've done 3, 4, 5, 6 months work and then it doesn't fit the box, if you like. It's all about communication and taking the residents through this as we go.
Okay, Roger, you took that on board, haven't you? And I'm sure the residents of Woodside will be onto their local members and onto their town council, making sure that we're pushing this forward, okay? And if we concur the meeting next week, I'm sure the minutes will be available, and we'll be looking at probably including some caseworks, etc., scrutinising some of them for the new policy and strategy, okay? Mr. Sutherland, are you happy with where we are?
Just one final comment, and thank you very much indeed for the hearing on that issue. It would be equally frustrating if the neighbour found that lack of progress meant he might find something else to do with his money, and that would put the burden back on the county council. I think it's just worth recording that point, that from local discussions, obviously he is looking for some action, and he has plenty of other opportunities to use that money, and it would be, as I say, very frustrating if we lost that opportunity. It's a most generous offer.
All right, thank you. Tony?
Yeah, just one point, and thank you for the gentleman bringing it to our attention yet again, because we're all aware of the safety issues. But back to the point that Councillor Smith raised regarding signs being removed, or flashing signs being removed, I think we should look at this on our subcommittee on the longevity of such signs, because you can go around the county, there's quite a few not working, particularly in Caldecott Church Road, both ends for a school there, they're not going to be working for years, bypassing Caldecott, and as other members say, I think the longevity of these signs, if they're going to fail, don't just take them down, replace them at the same time, unless they're repairable, I don't know. But longevity of these signs, I think, is important to look at.
Okay, thanks, Tony. I think it sounds as though we don't have any spares there, and it means you take one down, you go send it away repair. It may be that we actually have to look at carrying a couple of spares. I don't know. I've got my ward is exactly the same as your ward, Tony. They're not working, etc. Okay. Okay, are you made a note of that, Roger? That we do we have an inspector going round, just making sure that our our signs are readable, etc., and making sure that they're up to standards. We should have, shouldn't we? Our area engineers will do that. Can you make a note of that? That we just can step that up. All right. Happy to move on. Thank you, sir. Quickly.
Yes, I hope it will be quick. We seem to have the start of a container depot opposite the Usk Island car park. We're very concerned as residents that there's been no consultation. We would deem it as a change of use under planning legislation. Whether that's correct or not, I'm happy to be corrected, but just wanted to alert Strong Communities Committee to that issue, raised at the Lambadic Community Council meeting last evening. I understand enforcement officers are looking at it, but would want it noted that we have a concern about the development of that site with no consultation, very unsightly, etc., etc. Thank you very much.
So the relevant bodies are well aware that you're not happy with the containers being there. So Lambadic Community Council and the enforcement officer of this authority are well aware of that, yeah?
My understanding is that, but the depot or the site only started being developed on Monday, and the first containers went in there yesterday afternoon, so it's been done very, very quickly.
Okay, who's your local member? Val, we'll leave that with you, Val. It's a local member issue, I think. Well done, Val, thank you. Right, are we okay? We're clear? Thank you. Right. I've got to find my computer up now, there you go. Confirm the minutes of our previous meeting. Agenda item number 4. Can we look at the minutes of the 10th of November, please, as a true and accurate record? Can I move a seconder, proposing a seconder, please? I've got Sarah, a seconder. I've got David. Okay. Hang on, Tony. Let's just move the minutes as an accurate and true record. Every member happy they're a true and accurate record? Right, that's okay. Right, that's moved.
I'd like a question of clarity what SUEZ means.
That's the company, company who come to talk to us about the MRF. That's correct, yeah? Yeah.
Ah, right. Okay, I'm with you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so the true and accurate record, we've moved them. The actions from the minutes are quite clear there. Action 5. Some of the actions there are on the work programme, so everybody happy with that to move that, yeah? Yeah, okay, that's been moved. Thank you. Right, agenda item number 6, grant for the partnerships. Let's put my screen up again. Right, good morning, and we have one of our partners in with us this morning. Good morning to you. Could you just introduce yourselves on the front there, from left to right or right to left? I don't really, I'm not really too bothered. So we'll start on our right here and just work your way down there.
Okay, I'm Louise George. I'm the Health, Social Care and Wellbeing Coordinator with Gwent Association of Voluntary Organisations.
Good morning, Martin Featherstone, Chief Executive at Gavo.
I'm Beverly Bolton. I'm the Youth Volunteering Officer based at Gavo.
I'm Mandy Moore. I'm the Third Sector Development Manager for Newport and Monmouthshire.
I job share with Mandy. I'm Joanne Gillard and I do Third Sector Development Management work in Monmouthshire.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Select Committee. I hear you have a presentation for us this morning, so what we'll do is we'll let you go through the presentation and then we'll bring in the report then. Is that okay?
That's great. Thank you.
Members happy with that? Yep, let's move then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're very pleased to have this opportunity to update the Stronger Communities Scrutiny Committee on the work of Gavo in Monmouthshire. In terms of some context, and I've got some copies of the presentation to leave with you and some supporting documents. Gavo's strategic aims are to build community resilience, work using the principles of co-production, so working closely with partners, strengthening the voice of the third sector and the influence of the third sector. A key part of our work is volunteering, recognising the social capital in our communities and how we can use that to best effect, particularly in a resource-constrained environment. So championing volunteering and making sure that that volunteering journey is a positive one. And working in a culture of collaboration, recognising that resources are difficult. So the sum of the parts, if you like, across Monmouthshire in the spirit of the Public Service Board, pathway to sustainability and delivering outcomes for our communities. So in terms of scope and scale and connectivity, Gavo is one of 19 county voluntary councils across Wales. We're the largest. We're slightly different because we deliver across 4 local authority areas in Gwent. So Monmouthshire, Caerphilly, Blaenau Gwent and Newport work in partnership with Torfaen Voluntary Alliance, who make up the remaining part of Gwent. We have a turnover of circa 4.8 million, employ 130 staff, and our governance arrangements are characterised by a trustee board, which is an executive committee, which is central. And we also have arrangements that are discharged through local committees. So we have a Monmouthshire local committee and a committee that relates to the other geographical areas. And that membership of the executive board and local committees is made up of, we do have councillor representation from Monmouthshire on the committee, and third sector representatives from different themes of the sector in Monmouthshire. In terms of, we're a membership organisation, so we deliver public benefit through to our members and through to organisations that aren't members, but hopefully will join Gavo at some point in the future. We deliver, which I'll talk about shortly, deliver quite significant parts of programme for government across different departments of government. And we're fortunate in Wales that we have, as a policy context, the third sector scheme, which is discharged through the Cabinet Secretary, Communities and Children, and essentially is funding to infrastructure that comes down through our national body, Wales Council for Voluntary Action. And essentially our key deliverables, if you like, which officers will talk about shortly, is really about supporting the funding of organisations, governance, volunteering and strategic engagement, so giving organisations a voice. Gavo is also represented on the All Wales Third Sector Partnership Council, which gives direct access to ministers, cabinet secretaries. So essentially, if we think about the landscape of the third sector, under the Third Sector Partnership Council, we have 25 networks representing different parts of the sector across Wales. So we're there on what they call the infrastructure part of the third sector, so the CVCs and WCVA. So in delivering our work across Gwent, we have critically important relationships with local government, so the local authorities in Gwent, Narren Bevan University Health Board, sort of funding initiatives driven through them, and also more recently through the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner, and sit on a number of partnerships that influence the work of those organisations and make sure that the third sector has a voice as plans and delivery is taken forward. Gavo also has a track record of delivering pilots in Wales. So Gavo's, at the request of the last Minister for Communities and Tackling Poverty, Gavo delivered a pilot for community asset transfer, which has seen developments in Monmouthshire and the other areas in Gwent. So in terms of the strategic context we're grappling with, as I'm sure all this will be familiar with you, in terms of future-proofing the organisation and our strategic positioning, clearly understanding the implications of Brexit moving forward, unpicking and positioning reference the programme for government, the Wales we want. So clearly we're thinking about children's zones, adverse childhood experiences, community asset transfer, definitions that I guess we're all grappling with and trying to understand, reference resilient communities. And if we think about the programme for government, we understand, I mean, none of this has been finally confirmed, we know, but changes to the poverty programmes, which I know perhaps has less impact in terms of communities first in Monmouthshire, for example, but I think it could potentially see a reinvestment perhaps and more of an ambition around rural poverty, which would have implications for Monmouthshire. So I think it's an interesting time in terms of what's coming through in terms of a policy agenda. We also have those 2 pillars of legislation, which are really part of our everyday commentary, if you like. I think our vocabulary is seasoned with liberal sprinklings of Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and Louise will talk about the latter shortly. And Gavo's pleased to have been actively involved through the Public Service Board and the the partnership architecture below that, informing the wellbeing plan in Monmouthshire. In terms of funding settlements, clearly we're all trying to do the best we can with perhaps less resources, work in different ways, innovation, and I think that's clearly key where collaboration is massively important, and perhaps how we can use technology to support how we share information and work together. So at a more local level, I've mentioned the Public Service Board, and I think we're sort of embedded in partnership structures, for example, the Programme Board, Performance Group, for example, and a number of groups that sit below that. And I think important conversations moving forward will be about, given the context of the Wellbeing Future Generations Act, what do some of those partnerships look like in that context, and how do we maximise the voice of the third sector in that arena? So hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour, a bit of the broader context. I'll now hand over to Mandy, our Third Sector Development Manager in Monmouthshire, in conjunction with Joe, who's going to talk about our Third Sector network.
Hello, everybody. Contrary to what the slide says, the Network Forum started in January 2016, and we went along the strands of maximising third sector contribution to public services. Also, we had Will McLean there to talk about the Monmouthshire Single Integrated Plan and the move to wellbeing plans. Since then, we've had sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Right, sorry. Since then, we've had about 2 other forums that have been directed by us on issues that are of mutual interest. The next Monmouthshire Third Sector Network, which we'd like to extend an invite to, will take place early in the new year, and we're going to be talking about social impact measurements and the asset-based community development, this new ABCD model that's about working from the ground up. In addition to the Network Forum, we also have virtual forums issuing information regarding health and wellbeing issues. And we're also working on a community database called Garvo Connections. We're trying to get all our community groups in Monmouthshire onto that database, and that you'll find that on our website. As Martin said earlier, I mean, Garvo, being one of the largest county voluntary councils in Wales, covers 4 areas and works closely with Torfaen. That gives us an economy of scale in the way we work in terms of our backroom services, such as human resources, administration, training, and financial management. Which means that a great proportion of our budget is already concentrated on direct service delivery and support to the third sector. As you can see, every year Garvo maintains a series of targets as set out by WCVA that demonstrates the work that we do. These targets and the information collected helps to identify the support needs for the third sector. This table you can see now shows the targets in the first column for 2016-17 for the Monmouthshire area, and the second column is the total for the first half-year stage. As you can see from the above, some of the annual targets have already been exceeded at half-year stage. This demonstrates the need for Garvo to support the third sector organisations in Monmouthshire. Garvo's training department provides a comprehensive training programme, PanGwent, with recent training in safeguarding, POVA and food hygiene undertaken by several groups in Monmouthshire. The development managers, that's Joe and I, along with the training team, also offer bespoke training to groups if and when necessary. And good news, as you can see in our key statistics, we managed to attract approximately 125k in the first half for community groups. But that's just the funding that we know about, because, as you know, not all groups tell us when they've been successful. All our staff are involved in the provision of advice and support, irrespective of whether they directly deliver services or not. Our finance staff help with payroll queries, human resource helps with advice to organisations on a range of personnel-related queries, and our administration team provides general information on all aspects of the third sector in Monmouthshire. I was going to go and tell you what we as development managers do, but I think Martin alluded to that earlier in his presentation, so I won't bore you with that bit. Yeah, next Good news is Garvo has been successful in gaining funding from the RDP Monmouthshire Leader Programme to provide a part-time opportunity for a creative toolkits officer for rural areas. This officer will work with communities to help identify priorities in their locality using the asset-based community development process, a bottom-up approach. To complement this, Garvo has also submitted an application to the Big Lottery Rural Communities Fund. This is in partnership with the Bridges Centre, MHA, and of course yourselves, MCC. We're going to provide two rural development officers working across rural Monmouthshire and parts of rural Newport. And we're hoping to hear the outcome of that application soon. A success of that is that we had to hold engagement sessions across the area before we put the application in to sort of gain some sort of recognition for it. And as a result, Bridges Centre are starting to lead on a theme of getting around Monmouthshire in an attempt to address some of the massive transport issues that exacerbate rural living. If anybody wants to know a bit more about that, you need to contact Mark Walton at the Bridges Centre. And you can have your say or try to influence it in some way. And the main rural development grant, which is £9 million lottery, is now open for applications for the community groups and organisations to access. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Hello. I'm going to talk through some of the projects that we've been involved in the last 12 months or so. I want to give you a flavour really of the range of projects that we're involved with, the breadth of the work that we undertake with those projects, and some of the partnerships that we forge as a result of that work. So I've started my talking about ACE. Abergavenny Community Enterprise was originally a community's first project. It's a community resource centre run for the community, by the community. It's volunteer-led. I think it's fair to say that in 2014, the the ACE Centre itself started to struggle somewhat in terms of its organisation and also particularly its finances. So Garvo stepped into the breach and agreed to act as lead partner on the project, and we took on the line management of the centre worker at ACE. So over the last 18 months or so, we've done a lot of work together with our partners and volunteers. We've revisited the partnership arrangements in place at ACE, reorganised the committee, and that's involved revisiting their aims and drafting the business plan. So we're continuing to look at policies and procedures that are in place in the centre, including ways of capturing really the positive impact that ACE is having on the local community and the positive outcomes. We've also looked at training needs, and we're starting to work through some of those with volunteers at the centre, and we've done countless funding applications. To be fair, we've worked absolutely tirelessly to look for monies, because ultimately we believe in what the ACE project is doing, and we believe in what it can do for the future. We've secured monies to March, end of March 2017, so their future's still shaky, as is morale at times, as you would expect. But ACE, to me, demonstrates the tenacity, really, the tenacity of the volunteers involved at the centre, but also Garvo's tenacity. Garvo will continue to work with that project. We will stick by those volunteers, if you like, in order to try and realise the potential of that centre for the local community and the local residents. There have been some massive pluses over the last few months. Number one, ACE is still there, which is no mean feat with the current kind of funding climate. We've increased the range and number of services on offer from the centre that local people can tap into. So we've got PACE operating there, which runs a scheme to help parents wanting to return to employment. There's a Citizens Advice Bureau surgery, There's a befriending scheme. Remploy operate from ACE. There are art classes, and there's been an excellent mental health gardening project. And you can see on the slide that they've done all they can with a small patch of land they've got outside. That's a fantastic project with really good outcomes for those involved. We've been running some trips to encourage more people to get involved from the local community, and that's worked well. And all in all, when you consider we're only open Monday to Wednesday, we are providing a lot of services. The list I've given is not exhaustive. So, as I say, I think ACE is testament really to the determination and tenacity of everybody that's involved, and really underlines that we believe in local people delivering community-led services. And that's kind of what our community development service is all about. I'll move on to a more straightforward example, if you like. We've been working with Caerwent Community Centre, known as the Old Gym, locally. They've known for a number of years that they've needed to refurb the project. Phase 1 was costed at about £150,000. They've got a very capable and experienced committee who've undertaken lots of projects over the years. They worked very closely with MonCC to secure Section 106 funding to the tune of about £126,000. And I know Mike Moran was incredibly supportive with our bid. Gavel's been working with MonCC and the committee to find the shortfall in funding so that they can realise that project. Now, a shortfall of about 22,000 might not sound like a huge amount, but it's critical to realising the project. So Gavel worked very closely, particularly with Mr Bedford from the project, and we've done a fair bit of drafting of funding bids. We've had 5,000 from Awards for All, £2,000 from Asda carrier bags. It's been a real ongoing process over many months to try and secure that funding, but we are all but there now. There's still a small shortfall. So this project is a straightforward demonstration of what can be achieved when people and organisations work together on a clearly defined goal. It strikes me as an example, again, of the dedication of the committee and Gavel and MonCC to see the project through to completion. So it's a very straightforward example, but a joy to work on as well. Thoroughly enjoyed working with that project. Partnerships is a continuing theme, really, through all the projects that we've chosen to speak about today. Gavel and MonCC's Community Connector project is just another example of how we're working with our partners to add value, really, to the projects that we're involved with. We've worked together to support people to develop this community initiative. Roggett Community Cafe are a very vibrant group of people who've achieved a massive amount in a short space of time. I've been working very closely with Sarah, the Social Enterprises Officer, connected to the Community Connections project. A group of people came together when their post office closed and decided they would like to open a community shop. So Gavel took them on a visit to see a cooperative who actually run a community shop up in Mid Wales. So that was a really interesting trip, a very enjoyable trip. Capital and initial outlay really were massive barriers to them getting involved in taking over the post office. So what they did is they settled on the idea of developing a community cafe which has a mobile post office van outside. It's been tremendously successful, and the profits that they're making from the cafe are being redirected to other community events like fun days. They had the BBC Two's street auction programme was filmed there. And I'm highlighting this because this is organisations play into their strengths. So in this example, Sarah, with her social work background, has given them regular support. There's been ongoing, and she's allayed their concerns about their abilities, or help them to realise that, that any barriers that they may perceive to taking this forward, may not be there, and we can work through them. They've linked with MonCC to get their hygiene certificates. And Gavel's come in, and what Gavel's offered is advice around constituting themselves, making sure that committee members understand their responsibilities, and we've had some very informal training sessions to explain what their roles are and how to move the project forward. We've also looked at how they can and can't use their profits. And we've looked at some funding bids together. But critically, the project's growing steadily and it's remaining true to its aims. It has been really popular. It's very well known locally. Kind of everyone wants a piece of it, if I can say that. So, you know, it is staying true to what it wants to deliver and what's important to the volunteers. So they're doing a lot of consolidating at the moment, but they do have a lot of ambitious plans for the future. And watch this space. Too long, sorry. Okay. So I'm going to skip Crafty Women, because this is, again, we've added in a similar way in terms of helping them to constitute and do some training and secure money. Should we move on to Best Kept Village? Right, Best Kept Village. This is a much loved competition. It's always had fantastic support locally. Gavel provides the administrative support for the committee, for the judging panel, and also for the awards ceremony. We also find the funding for the project. And that's been really hard in recent years, even though it's a relatively small amount, because our bids are competing for ever smaller pots of funding. And we're up against other bids that are aligned with poverty agenda, vulnerable groups, you know, and we don't always compare favourably in terms of securing that funding, if you like. So to broaden our appeal in future and to move with the times, we've decided to we're going to try and update the competition and align our aims to a more environmentally focused agenda. So we'll be bringing in some new categories, looking at bee-friendly planting in communal areas, looking at recycling efforts and environmentally friendly approaches. So to this end, we're engaging partners like Befriendly Monmouthshire, Gwent Energy CIC, and we'll be using their expertise really to guide us in updating the competition. And again, we'll be drawing out the links with MonCC's environmental strategy. And using this approach, we're confident that we'll secure sponsorship monies and maybe small grant monies to secure the future of the competition. But again, that's just to demonstrate that even small projects need to be thinking strategically and to be aligning their purposes with that of other organisations and working together. We also worked on the Eisteddfod this year. Gavel was involved in supporting the initiative and raising our own profile at the event. And I leave it there. Thank you very much.
Okay, and my colleagues have told you sort of about the work that Gavo does generally with, I suppose, the community at large and the broad spectrum of the community. But we also have some projects that focus, I suppose, on people that need a little bit more help and support, some health and social care projects. And our team consists of myself, Health and Social Care and Wellbeing Coordinator, a carers coordinator and an education programme for patients coordinator. I'll speak very briefly about those roles as we go through. For my part, because my role is about maximising the role and the contribution that the voluntary sector can make to health and social care services. Things like the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, we've ensured that the voluntary sector have an opportunity to be part of that and to understand how they can contribute to it. Also, largely involved in the Our Monmouthshire conversations that have been taking place. Okay. Another piece of work was around the Dowis Cymru website. I mean, the really good news for Monmouthshire is that it is an awful lot out there in terms of voluntary and community sector, but the bad news is that people just can't find it. There's loads there, but the problem is finding out about it. So we hope that the Dowis is an online website where all the information can be deposited and people will have ease of access to that information. Another area where Wales, and in terms of Monmouthshire, they really are leading the way in terms of work around dementia. You've probably heard in the past about the Raglan project and how that's rolling out across Monmouthshire. And in Gavo, we're doing our bit towards that. We deliver the Dementia Friends sessions, And at the moment, I think we've got something like 1,337 dementia friends have been trained in Monmouthshire. So that's a piece of work that really is going well. As well as that, to support that piece of work, we are the first area in Wales to develop a dementia roadmap. And this resulted from a piece of work that cropped up at the clustered meeting of the GPs in South Monmouthshire, where they raised dementia as being a big issue for Monmouthshire because of the ageing population that we have. And they'd seen an area of good practice in England around dementia roadmap. Again, it's where information, no matter what stage you're at, whether you're worried about memory loss, whether you've had a diagnosis, whether you're a carer, it's somewhere where you can go and find a whole raft of information that might help you through that process. Another piece of work that's happening across Monmouthshire is the Health Champions programme. Again, this is working with citizens to give them small pieces of information that will help them better manage their life. So we run sessions on things like smoking cessation, weight management, immunisation and screening to get people to increase take-up of that, and to raise awareness of all the support services that are out there for people. Safeguarding is another area there that we just really wanted to emphasise how much there's been increased involvement of the third sector. Gavo is involved with the Adult Safeguarding Board and the Children's Safeguarding Board, and at the last two conferences that have been put on, the organisations have commented about the increased level of voluntary organisations involved. So, that's really pleasing to know that people out there working in the community are becoming more and more aware of the role that they have to play around safeguarding. And finally, carers, again, another area where Monmouthshire really is leading the way, really, across Wales. In fact, somebody had said to me, if I was a carer, I'd like to be one in Monmouthshire, because we really seem to have got our act together around that. We have a project worker based with us who's part of the carers project team to ensure that carers, unpaid carers, that is family carers, get the help and support they need. And just to put that in context, I started work 12 years ago with Gavo, the same within a week of the carers coordinator. And I remember at that point there were 200 carers on her database. There's now over 900 carers. So a lot of work's been done to get people to identify themselves as a carer, and by doing so, getting the help and support they need. So again, another flagship for Monmouthshire, really, and a really good example of partnership working and what could be achieved. Okay. Oh, sorry, finally. Education. Again, this is a programme for people with long-term health conditions, so arthritis, diabetes, asthma, any health condition really. And again, it teaches people skills that will help them better manage their lives so that those conditions don't become all-consuming and take over their lives. It helps people to carry on living a full and active life, albeit that they have a condition that they probably are going to have to live with. So.
Hello everyone. I am part of the volunteering team based at the Monmouth Volunteer Centre. We are part of 22 CVCs and volunteer centres across Wales. The volunteering team consists of Claire Jones, who's the volunteering officer, and she deals mainly with the over 25s, and she's also our volunteering team manager. Myself, Bev Bolton, I'm the youth volunteering officer, so I deal mainly with the 14 to 12, the 25-year-olds. It's a part-time post, it's a 15-hour post that's funded by the Gwyrfol Initiative, which is a Welsh Government initiative. Our aims within the volunteer centre really is to promote, support and develop participation of volunteers appropriate to all local needs. And we do this by promoting volunteering in a positive manner to all sections of the community. So we work with independent volunteers, we work with DWP, we work with the employment support and training support organisations, and I work closely with the local schools and colleges, trying to work from age 14 plus, obviously, because that's the target audience, so we can start volunteering at an early age. And like I say, we work closely with school colleges and the work programmes. I provide presentations, and also Claire provides presentations, and we also offer one-to-one support for students and older members of the community. In looking for volunteering work, we help to support them. They may have problems with expenses. they may need training needs and so forth. So we help them all the way with that. We also promote good practice and provide advice and guidance on all issues which are relating to volunteering. And we work closely with local organisations in helping to ensure that they have all the correct policies and insurances in place. And they have the right training as well to enable them to support and supervise volunteers effectively. So we're currently working with 264 registered organisations within Monmouthshire. And that includes the internal volunteers of MCC and the friends of groups who also work with MCC. It also works with the schools, the colleges, the health boards and so forth. So it's not just the voluntary sector, it's the statutory sector as well. We conduct annual review visits with organisations to ensure that all their policies are up to date and all their insurances are up to date. And we use that as well to help to develop other voluntary opportunities within those organisations. We also use that as a promotion tool because we offer our own recognition scheme, but I'll mention that later at a later stage. And we also provide outreach volunteer centre services. Because we're now based in Newport, obviously we don't expect members of Monmouthshire to come into Newport. They can if they want, but we offer an outreach service. So we regularly attend the Bridges Centre in Monmouth, the ACE Centre in Abergavenny, so that the volunteers can come along and they can speak to us on a one-to-one basis. We've started, as of the beginning of the year, we started the Gwent-wide Third Sector Volunteer Management Network. And that works in partnership with Gatherwant Torfaen Voluntary Alliance. And that's inviting all voluntary organisations along for a network meeting, but we also provide information on good practice. We provide presentations by other organisations of information that might be useful for organisations. And it also helps us to all work together to promote partnership working with across Gwent. We have a Shout About blog on the website now, so if anyone wants to look at any good practices or any good case studies in relation to volunteering, you're welcome to go onto the Gavo website to have a look at the Shout About page there. And as part of my role, I promote the Cash for You grant, which is the Gwrval Youth-led grant. So we do this on a yearly basis. We have a pot of money from Welsh Government, and that is basically to fund youth projects within Gwent. We have a young panel members as our board members, so they are the ones that judge which organisation receives the money or not. So there's no adult input. Okay, it's purely youth-led all the way through. And in regards to the recognition, which I mentioned earlier, we now run 2 recognition programmes. We do the Millennium Volunteering Programme, which has been running for quite some time now, over 10 years. And that is more aimed for the 14 to 25 category. There are a lot of youngsters out there who are doing some form of volunteering, and it would be really nice if they could receive recognition from the Welsh Government for all their volunteering work. So we promote this as much as we can through the schools, colleges, through the independent volunteers. And we have quite a big uptake, especially through the sports development and through the youth service in MCC. A lot of their volunteers are going through the Millennium Volunteering Programme and have received a lot of certificates along the way. And the other one then is the Gavo recognition scheme. And we thought, well, because the youngsters are receiving certificates, it'd be nice if the over 25s it would be nice if they receive recognition for all their volunteering. So we offer this now to all the organisations so they can invite all of their volunteers along then. So, you know, we appreciate not every older volunteer would like to receive recognition. But if anyone would like to, then obviously, you know, they only need to contact us or the organisation, and then we can sign them up to that. Recently, we held our annual volunteering awards, achievements awards. We held this in participation with MCC this year. And they help with the nomination side of things. They also helped with the staging, the PA system, and the planning as well. It was a brilliant evening. It was held at Caldecott Choir Hall. It was held on November the 25th. And it just could give us a chance then, obviously, to appreciate and to recognise all of the volunteers that we have in Monmouthshire. We've got, we also work very closely with MCC in the Joining Up volunteering group. And that there is an opportunity for all organisations to come together within a meeting, so we can network, we can share good practice, we can pass information along, and if relevant, people can share their volunteers as well. So there might be a particular volunteer who needs a particular work experience, and it gives that volunteer to swap between different organisations to pick up as much work experience as possible, especially if it's helping them, towards their university applications and so forth. And Claire Jones and Owen Wells, MCC, they delivered a joint workshop in collaboration with the WCVA, and it took place on the annual conference this year, and the title of that was Volunteering for Wellbeing. So that was a successful workshop. So we work very closely with Owen on a regular basis, and and the relationship is going really well at the moment. So and we're introducing each other to different forms of training aspects, and opening up to different networks as well within the voluntary sector, which is really useful for us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully we've been able to give you a flavour of our work in Monmouthshire, and hopefully a sense that your current investment of £12,000, how we add value to that through bringing in sort of other funding, using that your investment as match funding, and the additionality, and hopefully a sense of our contribution to building resilient communities in Monmouthshire. So clearly we're very happy to take any follow-up questions.
Thank you, everyone, and well done. That was a well worth and worthy presentation put before us today, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you for your hard work in what you carry out within Monmouthshire. Right, questions? Val?
Yes, please. You made reference to the fact we've got a representative. Who is our representative to Gavo, please?
He's the representative nominated from this council, I believe, to Gavo, yes. Okay, I got Sarah and then Tony.
Thanks, Chair. I've got 3 questions. Is that okay? I'll go through them each and then hopefully respond post those. So the first question is around the sort of sustainable funding. So you allude on that in, I think it's in your strategic plan. So in terms of identification of income generation. So it's really just a feeling from you about funding in the future and how you're going to be sustainable, particularly in light of potential cuts to maybe some of your funding streams like Communities First, some of those grant schemes. So just really understanding that business model from a funding perspective over the next few years. The second question was just around what sort of resource you put into communicating the work that you do. So I think there's some fantastic stuff going on, really great, and we've heard lots about that today. And I just wondered, do you think that's being effectively communicated? Because I think, it's great for us to hear this today. It's not just for us to scrutinise, the investment we make as a council, but it's to understand how we can go out and talk about the fantastic work you do with our residents. And I think it'd be great to hear a bit more about how you're going to communicate those successes that you're clearly achieving as an organisation. And sorry, the third question was just around the role of the private sector, really. Is the private sector play much of a role in the work that you do? So you mentioned, say, the sponsorship of the awards, the volunteering awards, that you had a couple of private sector sponsors, but just in terms of actually some of the other work, in terms of how you can get the private sector on board, I don't know if that falls more to organisations like Business in the Community, or whether it's something that maybe might be in your long-term plans. So, thanks.
Thank you very much for the questions. So if it's okay to start with the communications one, and then perhaps we can link the private sector one to income as well. So I think in terms of communications, I think we do have essentially a communications officer. I think one of the challenges we have is, as one of the presentees mentioned, is really about making sure our resources are delivering, and it's sometimes harder to actually align those resources from a corporate point of view to support activities like communication. But clearly, we've developed our website recently, put quite a bit into improving that. And I think really it's then about social media strategy and recognising how different community groups communicate, and also how we build new audiences and raise that profile, but also perhaps in a way that is realistic in terms of what we can offer. So we're also not raising expectations, and perhaps those of other partners as well. So I think there's a responsibility there as well. But so I think it's about continuous improvement really, and incremental. And in terms of we discussed at our Gavo Away Day earlier this year, a communications plan, who we should be communicating with, how and why. So I think that's probably an area we need to strengthen in the plan, and we acknowledge that. So it's very much in the work stream. In terms of sustainability, I think we can think of Gavo, but we also need to think about the wider sector, because we have a responsibility to support organisations and think broader than our own financial health. I think we're clearly interested in the programme for government and what opportunities might come down through that. I think clearly I think there's a slight risk at the moment that understandably we're almost waiting for that programme for government to really kick in, and we're almost, there's a lot of cars on the grid, but perhaps not the petrol in them to get them going. So there's a bit of a lag really, as we might expect with the new programme for government. I think we're working with groups to help them diversify, so different governance structures and social enterprises, for example. And I think increasingly perhaps those links with the private sector will become more important in terms of those their corporate responsibilities. And I think if we think about, Bev referred to the volunteer awards, so we've got some helpful links now with organisations like Go Compare, the British Airways, for example, and I think it's really important that we further develop those links and in a positive way, which we started on that journey, but almost hold those organisations to account in terms of, for example, they're in communities, so what are their wider responsibilities to communities, and how do we develop that? And I think it is about innovation as well. So we can think about the private sector, but also in terms of the spirit of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, how we can work, building on the positive relationships we've got already with statutory partners, how we take those to another level as well. And I think that's really about kind of leadership and the discussions at the Public Service Board, but translating that rhetoric, if you like, that mantra into reality.
Okay, Sarah?
Yeah, I think, this all sounds really positive, and I think there's a real opportunity there, because I think, like you say, we're still waiting on the programme of government. We've got some sort of legislative programme, but once we see more legislation come forward, which might put more onus on the private sector to do more in terms of corporate social responsibility, maybe around things like, say, circular economy, for example, there might be an opportunity for us to link in through the sort of volunteering side with that. So I think it's a good opportunity at the moment. So, yeah.
Would you like to come back in? Yeah.
I work with the Caerphilly Volunteer Centre as well. And we regularly work with the businesses in the community, private businesses. We work regularly with DWP, Welsh Water, Lloyds Bank, Barclays Bank, and we provide regular volunteering opportunities for them to do as a group. So, so that is happening within the Caerphilly area, but that is due to be developed within the Monmouthshire area now, yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think 2 hours would have been insufficient to talk to you about what I want to talk to you about today, although we'll try and get in what we can. I understand your work with the dementia and dementia friends. Most of us in Monmouthshire County Council is a dementia-friendly county. I haven't got my badge on this morning, and I'm very acutely aware of the problems of dementia. My brother-in-law's got severe dementia, so I can see the work that's being done through the voluntary sector and around. Also, the Stroke Association. I believe you work with the Stroke Association in east of Monmouthshire. A question of help rather than not. Are you aware of Herbert Road in Caldecott from social care? It's a respite centre run by Torfaen in Monmouthshire. You've sort of triggered my mind. The parents have come to me with some requests of help. How can they raise money for various bits of equipment? And one of these ladies actually lives in Simon's Ward in Llanelli Hill. I've pointed them in the direction of various routes they can apply for grants for. They want to set themselves up as a friends group. Would you be in a position to help them on that? I think I'll point this girl in the direction of you because you can sort of guide them forward. And what they want to do there is they've got 2 houses converted into one. It's respite care for certain periods of time, for holidays and not what. And they've got a massive back garden, and they want equipment for these youngsters to express themselves on, because at the moment they'll kick a door in rather than go and jump around the garden. So I'll speak to you later about that, and they can follow that through.
Anything else?
Yes, one point. One point is within the report that came to us, it's on 3.4 or page 13. It talks about the funding is awarded to some of our third sector partners. For example, third sector compact, advice service, families first, etc. What is the families first that you've got on this report purely Monmouthshire? And what does it do in terms of supplementary and Flying Start, for example? They do knit together, don't they?
Would you like to answer that one, Sharon? Because I think it's taken that from your report. Well, the report that we had before us. Sharon, would you like to? Yeah.
Good morning. My name's Sharon Lloyd. I'm from I manage the Public Services Board and the Strategic Partnership team. Families First currently sits within our team in Monmouthshire. It does fund some third sector activity, which at the moment the funding, we probably receive one of the smallest funding pots out of all of the Families First projects, unfortunately. But it does go towards funding our young carers service, and it also goes towards funding the Home Start project. And I know as third sector organisations, both of those are linked to the Garvo organisation as well. So that's where the Families First funding currently goes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, Tony? Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think that's okay for now. I'll speak to the ladies after.
All right. Anything else, anyone? Val?
Very practical one. Where is the Abergavenny Community Enterprise located, please? Is it where I think it is? Right.
Anything else, Val?
Thank you, Chair. Oh, sorry.
Well, let Val finish off.
Because looking at your budget, your monies, 4.8 million, I mean, you get a very small contribution from Monmouthshire, don't you? And presumably the other authorities are about the same ratio? Or are they more generous?
I think Monmouthshire is sort of just below average in terms of a benchmarking exercise.
Okay. Right, thank you. So your budget comes from Welsh Government in the majority, or do you have to go seeking grants for every penny this amount?
Well, we get a for infrastructure in the areas we deliver, we get an amount from Welsh Government which comes down through WCVA, which we then report on. So that's in the Joe mentioned Mandy mentioned some of the indicators we deliver against. So that's a level of core funding that helps sustain our organisation.
What percentage is that?
Well, it's probably about overall about sort of 30% of our total amount, and then in terms of our wider funding mix, we then have our SLAs with local authorities. We then have some funding from the Health Board for like the health and social care function, for example. Some sort of lottery bids that we're delivering against, and also we pilot projects, for example. I mentioned the community asset transfer one, and then some money linked to the poverty programme, so Communities First in other areas in Gwent, for example. So.
Can I follow that on, Chairman? Can I ask, please, about the community asset transfer, how you're involved with that, because it's quite interesting.
Yeah, so the previous Minister for Communities and Tackling Poverty recognised some work that Gavo was involved in Blynie Gwent, which was around the community asset transfer agenda. So and then the minister sort of, if you like, funded a pilot initiative covering Gwent that Gavo sort of hosted and delivered, and that was about supporting third sector organisations to engage in the asset transfer agenda by working with local authorities and other statutory partners. And we've produced a report to Welsh Government on the pilot, which ended end of March. And we're pleased to see that community asset transfer is mentioned in the new programme for government. So conversations with with Welsh Government recently suggest that they want to take a more cross-departmental approach to asset transfer, recognising that clearly it sits in communities, but also, you know, might well sit in other Welsh Government departments. They want to try and secure it from that point of view. So we're at the stage of awaiting further news in terms of how they're going to take that forward.
Okay. Anne?
I'm just amazed. Thank you very much for your presentations. I'm just amazed about how Gavo has expanded since the early days that I remember. It's just amazing. And it's really good to meet you, Mandy. I see we quite often get emails from you, and it's nice to put a face to the name. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
Okay. May I ask a question on some of the slides there? I noticed it may have been the last slide that we didn't have Torvine on there, but Torvine were mentioned in part of. Are some of the authorities not linked to some of it, or or do all the authorities within the portfolio link into everything? Because the last slide didn't show Torvine, it showed Blaenau, Monmouthshire, Caerphilly. I think that was it.
I mean,
I didn't see Torvine. I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
Do we buy into everything, or do we buy into part? Because
in terms of how Gavo is constituted, so our remit is to deliver across all areas apart from Torvine. So Torvine is a separate organisation, and their responsibility is for that patch, and that really reflects the model of all the other CVCs in Wales, so that they deliver to a individual local authority area. And where Gavo is different is clearly we deliver across 4, and I think clearly we have a responsibility as Gavo and Torvine Voluntary Alliance to work out how we can share resources, how we can maximise representation on regional groups, for example. But essentially Gavo has a board and Torvine Voluntary Alliance has a board, so they're constituted as separate organisations as we stand.
okay, it's a bit.
But everything that we've talked about this morning, all the examples we've given, are the work that we proactively do in Monmouthshire. We do different projects in different areas.
Right.
As Martin alluded to, we get money from here, there and everywhere.
Yeah.
And that influences what we can do across the different patches. But everything that we've described this morning is work that we specifically do here in Monmouthshire.
I was just trying to get my head round is a budget of just over £4 million. You apply wherever you get your monies from, you've explained. But I was just trying to get in my head there is part of, we may put a small sum of money in there, but part of your applications to get your money is because we're in there as well, so the percentage is right. And I'm just trying to get in my head then where Torvine sits in all this. I know we sit in it, and Caerphilly and Blaenau and Torvine is separate again, and Torvine came into mention, and then it slipped out again, and I'm just trying to work in my head where they were in all this. Because it is a partnership as well, isn't it? It's like what the Welsh Government want as well. They want everybody to be all joined up.
For our point of view, is more of a goodwill partnership in regards to the volunteer and network management meetings, because a lot of their organisations cover Torvine and Monmouthshire. We just thought it would be good practice to bring Torvine in to help assist with that meeting, But as regards to a partnership, as regards to, funding or anything like that goes into it, no, it's just purely an invitation.
Okay. One of my last questions is, how do you prioritise then what you're going to do? Because what you've said to us today is, like Tony said, we could spend hours in here, but you must have to prioritise what you're going to lead on and what you're going to do, because everybody must pull you from pillar to post. So how do you prioritise that?
I think we have responsibility to a board of management, so they would sort of help set those priorities. We have a strategic plan which sets out a framework for how we're working, and we'd have organisation away day that would set out our business plan. We're also driven by partners and funders which sort of drive our work. So, for example, in Monmouthshire, the priority would be supporting the wellbeing assessment, for example. So I think it's a. I mean, I'm sure as you find in local authorities, it's how you best use your capacity to deliver outcomes, keeping a focus on communities, but also sometimes saying we can't do that at the moment, but somebody else can, and how we build that representation in the sector as well. So it's not just about Gavo; it's how we build that resilience, and I think that's part of the ongoing dialogue with partners, really, in terms of how do we get, how do we use what we've got to best effect, but also in a culture of continuous improvement, how we get better at what we do as well. So it's that continual challenge, really.
Okay, and with the agenda which is in place, with cuts being made everywhere, are you focused now for 17-18 and 19-20, your long-term strategy and plan, or is that impossible really because you don't know what monies you'll be able to operate from?
I think we're looking at we've achieved a surplus position 15-16 and a surplus position for this year, hopefully. I think the last couple of years we've had to make quite a few changes in terms of how we use offices, for example. I think the 17-18 will be quite challenging, and equally moving forward. I think it's the councillor's comment about the private sector is how we recognise that statutory funding might be tapering a little, and so how do we support resilience in different ways, and that's really innovation, really. And I think we need to make sure we're thinking about development and working in different ways.
Okay, Tony? David. No, I was looking at you, but Tony's mind, I don't know why.
Two fairly young, aspiring councillors here.
Microphone, Tony. Tony. David, please.
Should we just reset and start again, Chairman?
No, I think you can carry on.
I was interested in the comments you made about Monmouthshire's contribution being a little bit lower than perhaps other people's. I'd like to know how that is sort of measured, because the budgets that we receive, the grants that we receive from the Welsh Government in Monmouthshire are really very different. I could understand perhaps it being lower, but what I'm trying to get is, are we being proportionate, if you like? I'm not trying to wheedle a way out of here. I'm interested that the county pulls its weight with the resources that it's got, put it that way.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd like to know, because you cover so much, and I have to congratulate you guys on how you hold a portfolio of this together as well as you do. Where does Monmouthshire come in terms of drawing on the facilities that you provide? Are we a bigger user of the facilities you provide? Does that make sense? Do you understand? I'm just trying to get a feeling of where we are as a county in the scheme of stuff. Yeah.
Would Sharon be better answering part of that question? I think it may be that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just to say, from a partnership perspective, one of the appendices attached to the report that I resubmitted for this meeting really lays out the landscape of the third sector representation across the partnerships under our Public Service Board. And the appendices there, you'll see some of the highlighted partners are where our third sector representatives actually contribute towards the outcomes of the single integrated plan and how we're working as a partnership. So there is a variety, and how much they draw on Garvo's time, I think I'll leave Martin to answer that question, if that's okay.
Thank you, Sharon. I think we can talk about support from local authority in terms of an SLA, for example, but I mean there's so many other different ways that support is provided, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a financial contribution. And I think for example where perhaps we receive larger funding amounts in other areas, it means that we can perhaps provide apologies. We can provide a greater range of support to the sector, if you like. So, for example, in Caerphilly we have what we call a One Beat event, which really celebrates the achievements of the sector, and we hold events in different parts of the Caerphilly borough, for example. So I think but I think what we've tried to do in Gavo, and again, I don't know whether you'd find it in a business management textbook, but it's almost sort of saying, well, actually, is trying to look at the area we cover as a piece and trying to provide consistency of service irrespective of funding. So, for example, what we've done recently is equalise our development officer support in Monmouthshire to the same as Caerphilly. So we've got a full-time equivalent post in Monmouthshire as we have in Caerphilly, because we recognise as an organisation, we want, in terms of our corporate strategy, we want to have visibility in Monmouthshire and a reputation in Monmouthshire, and we can't. It's harder to achieve that if we've got less resource on the ground. So we've almost taken a decision to actually say, if we put more resource in, even if the funding's a bit less, we can actually deliver a bit more and maybe build that funding through our links. So I think it's about taking a mature approach. And then I think because we've got hopefully more presence, more visibility, we can then draw down other opportunities. And so I think we'd probably say we've got a different strategy for each local authority area. And you know, I mean, we know this, don't we? But each local authority area presents with different challenges and different, you know, set of circumstances and demographics and poverty indicators, and so it's how we respond to that as well.
Okay, David. Sarah.
I don't think I'm quite where I wanted to be with it, but okay, I'll live with the answer. Thank you.
Just add up in terms of your question, and like, do you access us? And I suppose we proactively come and access you as well. So we get engaged in as much of the work that the local authority is doing as we can. So I mean, you mentioned that, you know, the respite centre in Caldecott, is it? Then, you know, I link up with the autism group that has parents and people with autism that utilise that facility. Magic are part of it, but this is a multi-agency group, you know, that meets here at the local authority. The work that you're doing around dementia-friendly communities, I link in with Jeff Burrows and the other people involved in that. Joe, Bev would be involved in like the youth offer group around the work that's doing with youth communities. So if you don't find us, we are proactive in coming to find you and, you know, identifying all the areas that's, because pretty much there isn't an area that we can't help in terms of the third sector. So, you know, we proactively seek out where we can work with you and where we can bring third sector organisations. Because it's not just about Gavo. You know, we're a small bit really in terms of what's out there in terms of the community sector. So we try to clip those into any work that you're doing really as a local authority and as a health board. So.
Okay. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, just in terms of your voice Wales-wide, I suppose, in terms of championing Gavo and again the excellent work that you do, I'm sure I've seen it somewhere. I just can't find out where it is. How do you quantify that return on investment in terms of the financial input that goes in, but then the volunteering output that comes out and the, you know, the actual outcomes that you get from projects? So how you're delivering, for example, on the health and wellbeing agenda, how is that ROI calculated so that when we go and present that case to Welsh Government, for example, we can say we're delivering your targets for you with very much less investment than maybe you're putting into the health service. So again, there's another rationale for why you should be continued to be funded at that level.
Social return on investment sort of framework, because some of Cardiff third sector council, that CVC in Cardiff, have got quite well developed systems, so we're looking at as to how we can share those systems in terms of and then there's the reporting that we do to WCVA on our funding from them, if you like, and other funders. So it's almost how we if you like, amalgamate that, put that together in terms of we've got our annual impact report, which talks about statements of activity, but is then in terms of being a bit more sophisticated in terms of the investments we're receiving, and then how we add value to those or can report back on those. And some funders are quite sophisticated in what they ask for, so we've got some quite good intelligence around that. But from a corporate point of view, we probably need to develop that a bit further.
Okay. May I ask a question? I think it follows on from your question, Councillor Dovey, not Councillor Eason, Councillor Dovey. If the monies that we contribute to Gavo per annum are set within our budget, and as you know, they have decreased slightly in the last few years, how do we measure in what we give you for the outcomes that we have? Because my point, I'm gonna be straight with it, is if we say within the budget coming in the next week, I think, next week, that we're actually going to reduce your funding even further, does that still will be measured on having the same return, or would we not be funded? I know it's a question, but will we still get the same? Because we're talking about business here, aren't we? And
Yeah.
if you get the same, because for what we're giving you, for what we're having back, I think it's a damn good deal at the moment.
Yeah.
But people may not feel like that within setting figures and doing equations, etc., and calculations.
Yeah.
So, and I'll turn it upside down. If we give you more monies,
Yeah.
would we get more from you?
I think when I think it's taking a view really in terms of I think if we look at our financial strategy globally across the organisation, it's then sort of saying, well, if we get more in certain areas, there are things that we would deliver more if we got more funding. So it's and we could, for example, in Caerphilly, our SLA is quite objective, and there's definite things we have to deliver against that funding. So as that funding's increased, we've then sort of developed a more kind of specific SLA. I think in Monmouthshire it's quite broad, and I think probably our presentation reflects that, that breadth of activity. But I think in terms of the local authority being clear about what it wants to commission, what it wants to fund, that supports its kind of resilience and strategy for resilient communities, for example, then we very much welcome that conversation in terms of what else could we deliver if we were in that position, and then perhaps it would be helpful if that was a bit more specific in terms of deliverables, which is often how our SLAs are constructed. And I think, if the funding reduced, clearly, the goodwill would still be there, and the aspiration, the motivation, and the ambition. But I think clearly, it's then we'd have to be realistic in terms of what your priorities would be, and what in terms of what we've presented today, what you particularly see value in from your perspective.
I think I'm just going to use the line of we're trying to do some work within the authority and working with our town and community councils, and I'll go back to the delivery of the project in Abergavenny, let's say, and I don't know which area that sits in. Is it Crossynon or I don't know which area it is. And it's Abergavenny, but it may be in a ward. If that ward has a community council and that ward said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do, we'll contribute £3,000 to Gavo, does that mean actually you could probably deliver a lot more within that project because there's a fund come from somewhere else? I'm just trying to make sure that we actually can get as much as we can out of yourselves, and if it means putting a little bit more in there, we can actually probably double of what we're having, because what we're having for that small amount of money seems incredible. If you even double that, we could end up with, let's say, something like Caerphilly, where actually you do have a mandate and you've got to deliver on that, you don't get it next year. Is that the case? Is that how it would operate?
I think particularly with if a town council put in a certain amount of money, clearly we need to be transparent in terms of what, reporting back to that town council in terms of what their investment is and what we've delivered. So that might be a more local delivery in terms of their patch. But I think hopefully what's come across today is how your investment enables us to lever in other funds, which adds value to that pot, if you like. So, and I think it's the relationships between the different funding that enable us to do more. So, if for example Monmouthshire was reduced, then that would impact on our capacity to add value in other ways. So, yeah.
Any more questions, Val?
Folks, you don't want to hear me, Dave. Whereas if you look at the Environmental Partnership Board, MCC, Brecon Beacons, Gavo, in some of these groupings you are clearly identified, in others you're not. Does that mean you're back to the Environmental Partnership, you're really part of that partnership, with the other you're there as observers or by invite but not part of the structure?
I think we've sort of prioritised certain partnerships, and clearly I think it's and probably in terms of more further dialogue with Sharon, for example, it's understanding where our resource is best used, and I think it might be, and I mean some of the people here have greater knowledge in terms of the partnerships in the partnership structure, but I think it's almost sort of saying, well, actually, in terms of what's happening, where is our resource best used? And it could be that we join a partnership for a particular bit of time and then move on to another one, depending on what the work programme is. So I think we've tended to prioritise the Public Service Board, the Programme Board, and the Performance Group. And then below that, I think perhaps the youth offer group, for example. So I think it tends to have to be fairly targeted.
Yeah, I think it answers, you know, it's
Yeah.
just struck me. If you looked at the chart as a whole, you think these are all the issues that we've got our feet well and truly entrenched in, where it isn't, some are deeper than others.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just mention just one thing on that? Because I think an area that we do have sort of a deficit in being able to be involved is around children and people. So we've definitely got a more heavier focus in terms of you know, what we get funded for around the adult world. Like, all the carers work was generally around adult carers. The education programme for patients is for adults. So a lot of our work streams are around adult provision. You know, in some of the areas that they have a children and a development officer or a worker in the county voluntary councils where they have a dedicated resource around children to develop children's services around children's activities. So that is an area perhaps, because I think perhaps what you mentioned was the families first work, and maybe, you know, we aren't as strongly and as heavily embedded in that as we are in a lot of the adults' activity.
It was just looking at the chart as it is, that if you gave it a quick look, you thought, gosh, all these things you're really, really involved in. Then when you look more closely, you see that Gavo is obviously interested in things, but is not as deeply embedded. You're there with the 16 plus steering group, creating an active Monmouthshire. Clearly identified their integrated youth offer group. Clearly Gavo is there, but there were some others that weren't. So that's answered my question.
And I would think it, you know, probably you'll find it's the work more around children, preschool, school age. You know, we do tend to pick it up then once you get to say 16 plus. So, you know, that is, you know, I suppose an identified deficit, perhaps.
Okay, all right. My last question is, and that is built around carers. We have no database for young carers within Monmouthshire. Is there any work being done on that with yourselves, because you have a database for carers, for older people's carers, etc.? Is anything done on young carers? Because it is something the authority actually needs to be done, and I've asked this question many times. I don't know actually the other select committee is involved in that, because we have no idea about young carers out there who actually, perhaps in Forest, do you want to add?
Yeah, just to let members know that the Adult Select Committee are going to be beginning a piece of work in sort of February, March time to look at a young carers strategy, and as part of that we'd look to invite key stakeholders, and I think it would be really useful if you were able to attend as well. But that's a piece of work that we're going to look to involve the Health Board as a stakeholder in as well, and I think that that would be the first strategy in Wales for young carers specifically.
Okay, thanks for that, Hazel. Both minds think alike. I didn't even know about that. So anyway, right, thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Do you want to just hang back for the next report? Because the report is here and you're part of that report, but you were asked to come anyway. So I'm going to bring the officer in now just to take us quickly through the report. And there are some recommendations from the report which we as a select need to be minded of. We've got to either agree to or not agree to. Do you just want to take us through that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. The report really was just to supplement the presentation today that Gavo have given in terms of where they stand from the third sector representation, and as an organisation how they support our third sector across Monmouthshire. This report really that was submitted is a follow-on from the meeting in April, and it's just really to outline how the third sector sits within the partnership landscape within Monmouthshire, how we've undertaken a review of those partnerships to ensure that they are embedded, that they can access the partnerships more easily, that they understand their position in terms of the Public Services Board and the single integrated plan, and really to ensure the governance arrangements and the reporting arrangements of those organisations. Likewise, the structure is in there in terms of our single integrated plan. Our partnership landscape is also included in the report under the PSB, with the names of all the partnerships and the subgroups then under those partnerships. And then we've mapped that further then in terms of where third sector representation sits on those partnership groups, which also goes back to Louise's point in terms of perhaps, and Councillor Smith's, in terms of where we're lacking, perhaps where Gavo sit on some partnerships but not necessarily others, But what I would stress around that is, even though there might not be a Garvo representative on those partnerships, a lot of the time there are third sector organisations on those partnerships who are linking very closely with Garvo as well. So we do have a joined up approach in that way. It is interesting that one of the areas that we've looked at recently was around community safety and the sort of lack of third sector in the community safety arena. But we recently held a workshop around that, and Garvo have been present at that then to really understand the voice of the community and how that issue matters to our community and how it can feed more closely into the partnership landscape. So the report really was just to supplement the presentation today and to give you an overview of where our third sector representation sits in the partnership landscape in Monmouthshire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on the report? Yep, Sarah?
Yeah, not so much on a lot of the detail in the report, but more just on recommendation 2.4. I think today's been really helpful having the presentation from Gabba. It's been really welcome, and you know, it's great to get a better insight into the work that you guys do. But it would be great if we could, and I appreciate you have a extremely busy work programme, Chair, but it'd be great if we could include those other bodies under 3.4 to come in and deliver similar presentations and to talk about their investment that they get from MCC.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, Sarah, and it's something we'll take on board in the next few months, so we can try and put some of the other organisations and ask them to come and represent. Can I just sum up now? I think it's important that we do minute something in the minutes, and if you're happy with what I'm going to read out, that we put in the minute from today's meeting. I'll take the recommendations. Are we happy with 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 of the report to endorse them? Yeah? Are we happy with that, Council? Select? Right, as reference to... Right, okay. Well, if I read this out now, what I'm going to read out to you, I think will be self-explanatory within the minutes then. Gavo's remit is huge, and they are dependent and significant. We need to understand how the resource is best used and help Gavo to deliver key objectives within the targeted funding. We need to urge the Cabinet member to consider how proportionately our funding is compared to other councils, but also what more could be delivered by Gavo if were able to contribute more. We want to ensure that what Gavo delivers is in with what we are trying to deliver. I'm sorry I'm having to realise, because it's the reflection as a council. Did everybody get that? I think it's self-explanatory. Is we're going to set a budget in a few months' time as a council. Do we decide that we leave things as they are, or do we ask the Cabinet member, actually, are we looking at increasing certain third sector budgets? But it needs to match what we're having as outcomes from delivering from Gavo with the monies. Sarah?
Yeah, sorry, and just to make that point then again, that, you know, until we scrutinise the other funding for third sector, it's quite difficult then to make the recommendations, because I think it'd be great if we could see additional funding, but maybe that's an issue with the funding of other. So we need to see the whole piece as a committee as part of that.
Objectives that we have to deliver. Perhaps it may be that we may go down the Caerphilly model. I don't know. It seems a little bit disjointed for us, doesn't it? There's no, what's the word? There ain't a strategy behind we're going here and going there with what we have asking Gavo to do for us. It may be that we may have a different outlook on it. Are you happy with that? We just need something minuting, don't we? Yeah. Okay.
Telling everybody else and not doing it myself. It's not clear in my mind how much interaction there is between us and Gavo prior to the budget to make sure that the correct weight is being given to what we do. Do you know? It needs to be clearer to me that there has been the right conversation, so that the right decision as far as we can possibly go as a county is being made. Am I expressing myself clearly? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I understand. Tony?
Yeah, I think we should really emphasise this 2.4. In particular, I mentioned the Stroke Association. I know that I know that the support is there from Gavo, but as far as I can see, Monmouthshire County Council look on the Raglan project as their way of delivering support, and the support the Stroke Association gets, physical support, really comes from on the back of Torvine. So really, we should be looking at the way we do support funding on these matters. That's one in particular, which I do know Monmouthshire don't really support, but they do support the Raglan project, which is a parallel thing.
It seems all a little bit disjointed sometimes, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So we're happy to put that recommendation in just in our minutes, and then we as a select and the cabinet member is well aware that we've taken that on board, and we. Pardon? Well, there you go. He was asked to come, but yeah. Right, let's just go through all this then. So are we happy with leaving 2.4, even though we're going to minute in our minutes? Yeah? Yeah? So 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4, we endorse them as select, yeah? Okay, can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we'll move on to our next agenda item. Thank you, Dan. Want to have a break? Want to have a break? Right, okay. A 10-minute recess, and then we'll come back in, all right?
5:25. Hallelujah, man.
spaces also mismanaged as well, had by
You do? I
but there's some that don't, so it's around
They always, when you press the button, it's twice as loud as English. And when they come along, when you're trying to buy alcohol, and it's flashing, oh, no, you don't have no, actually flash. I want it to be
well, McDonald's have just brought in self-service machine, and there's no finance district. So yeah, so I'm working with them.
From my perspective, it works for me.
But well, Roscoe have got some big targets, haven't they? 1 million by
Well,
2050.
they've got to give us money.
They've got to put resources into it, otherwise you can't commit to something and not actually follow through.
You've got to have enough teachers. I think you've got to have taught the first class. You've got a chance there.
Yeah, and they need that's a big.
They need the teachers. We've got to make sure there's people, kids are good. And I said to them, kids try to keep it in Welsh in Wales. You've got to get them to do their university degrees in Welsh. And you don't fund them because they won't come back. You've got to fund them to be educated in Wales.
It has to be some not radical, but some really.
It's got to be radical.
Oh yeah, it's got to be, yeah. So
You've got to virtually double what we got before.
in 40 years, less than 40 years. This is what you said. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
What they've tried doing is a lot of lifting up, putting some more stuff underneath, but it's, I think we probably just put some more on top.
I think one of them is still there, not too sure. Did you finish?
He's done it at the moment. I haven't met him. No, sorry, no. I haven't met him yet.
So you could spend hours with that. Sorry.
Right away here. Very good. What would we put pass through Brookside?
Oh, I know what I'd ask you as well, please.
I just sent it to Richard. Richard said that it's in hand with Mark and the agent, so I don't quite know how it's in hand, but it is. I don't think there's any disagreement about where to put it. I think it's more just a procedures thing about the time and process and whatever. So they're trying to find a way to source it.
Only get the church on top of it, don't I?
Can you folks help me with identify for
County Hall. Yeah, what's up? No, what's up? Well, I'm coming over this afternoon, but, I'll call in later on. Get your sorry,
Incidentally,
Will you be there?
Welsh Government's going to require a strategy on your public loo. And I've heard nothing about that. I think it's interesting, sort of the ones come forward for the market requested last time.
Everything all right?
The market.
No, the market ones come forward to report.
I'm not in front of it. Okay.
When did that come through? Oh, I've got the email from Roger, yeah.
On the market.
Yeah. Be more interesting to get a concise one just about how it's been given away a loo.
No.
That's 40,000.
In Raglan.
What are you into, swing, jazz?
And the fact that we cannot get a response.
No, no.
Well, that answer you gave today. We've could be completed. You're not going to get your sign back.
Why, you want it?
Look, we've got two broken.
When I was sort of, I sort of relearned God speaking, I just learned when I was a kid.
We've got two been broken for 6 months. Never
I used to play when I started playing the radio in the car. So I donated my car. After a while, then you started writing down sessions and yeah.
Cards, they will buy, they'll be buying the cards.
Reorganisation.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's about just getting the gist. Yeah, that gradually happens. Once you start doing it, once you start.
New team meeting.
I didn't see, but I didn't see the instructions. I looked a bit closer. I just saw the agenda. I was going to come, but then I felt too rough.
I just think it's 12 hours, 20 years. I think it's about, what's the weather like? How are you? How are you feeling?
I'm minister on your head all the time.
Yeah. I think it's about the conversations you're going to have.
It's all good. Kids learn by conversation. It's only when they got
Okay, I think we are Val, David, myself, Tony, and Anne. Anne Webb. Sarah's had to leave, yeah. She's given it up on us. Right, so we. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. 10 minutes is up. David? Just waiting for Anne. Okay, well, let's make a move. Anne will be in a second. Right. Good afternoon. Agenda item number 7, Rights of Way Improvement Plan. Okay, do you want to take us through the report there, please? Just introduce yourself. Are we live streaming? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm Matthew Lewis, and I'm the Green Infrastructure and Countryside Manager, and to my left is Ruth Rourke, who's the team leader for the Countryside Access team. I'll keep this fairly brief, but the purpose of this report is really to come to you towards the start of a process for reviewing the Rights of Way Improvement Plan. We've set out the scope and the timescales, and we've also set out how we intend to come back to you later on once we completed the assessments and consultations. So just to quickly recap, the Rights of Way Improvement Plan, it's a statutory plan required by the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, and it covers the management, development, integration and promotion of the local Rights of Way network. The first and ROIT was approved in 2007, and I've just managed to find a hard copy by searching in the files this morning. And we now have to review that. There's a 10-yearly review period. Welsh Government published some fairly extensive guidance on the review of Rights of Way in July, and so we're really just setting off on that process now, so we're coming to you very much towards the beginning. The review requirements and the detailed requirements and the timescale are set out in the appended paper. I wasn't really intending to go through that. Happy to answer questions on it. I really just wanted to say that the existing ROIP took a very much a benefits-driven approach to countryside access. So we looked at the health benefits, the economic benefits, the tourism benefits, and the transport benefits that can be derived from the rights-of-way network. And that's really an approach that we feel has served us very well. Just to give you some idea of figures, in the last 6 years, we've received just over £900,000 worth of external grant aid for rights-of-way improvement, and that relates to MCC spend of £350,000 in that period. So for every pound that the council has spent on its capital programme, we've managed to bring in £2.60 external. And we think that that is very much due to the fact that that the ROIP positions us to take that role of demonstrating the wider benefits in terms of well-being and health, and community involvement through things like volunteering. So our intention is to try to retain that spirit, if you like, into the new ROIP. There are some statutory assessments that we need to carry out. I won't go through those in any great detail, but they're in the table. One that we've just got underway is a statutory assessment relating to the needs of people with disabilities. And we also need to involve the Local Access Forum in the process, and I've set out there some of the things that guidance says that the Local Access Forum will be involved in. So it's very much going to be the focus, I think, of the new Local Access Forum, which we have just now appointed the last members on Monday. And so that very much be the focus for their work over the next sort of 18 months or so. In 3.6, I've just set out how we propose to come back to you. We need to carry out various statutory assessments over into the spring, and then we propose to come back to you in the summer of next year with those assessments, and before Cabinet makes the formal decision that we required to make by guidance as to whether to prepare or amend or prepare a new ROIP. I think in practice we can assume that we will need to prepare a new ROIP, and so it's just part of the process, if you like, of going down that route. And then we propose to come back to you probably early 2018, but that's the sort of current timescale. We'll see how we go on that in timescale in terms of the results of the consultations, and with a draft final plan for your consideration before then that's published.
Okay.
And I think that's probably all I need to say at this stage.
Yep, that's it. Anything on that, Ruth? No? Oh, yes. You're fine. Right, members, any questions? Tony?
Fully support this, the need to do this. One question in particular, don't ask you the footpath number and try and look at how I can't find it. It's the extinguishment and creation.
Extinguishment and creation of a footpath along the side of the Netherton in Caldecott, which meanders its way around the industrial estate, rather than going straight across to where Monmouthshire Depot is. What's the progress on that? Because there was some hiccup in that 60-yard stretch, wasn't there? Would that be in the public right-of-way changes? Don't ask me the footpath number, I can't remember it.
Yes, we were looking at that as part of the Wales Coast Path developments, I believe, some time ago, and it's still ongoing. One of the landowners wasn't prepared to dedicate part of the land there, and that's still the situation.
Right.
So we keep going back to him, and hopefully, eventually, things will change and we'll be able to develop that further.
There's a valuable link to the Wales Path.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The only problem we do have with issues like that is if the landowner is not willing to hand over, it's very difficult then, isn't it? And you've got to prove your case for CPO perhaps, but you've got to really prove that, and you're talking about very expensive process then in doing that. And I think there probably is going to be lots of them, isn't there? Or there are lots of them out there, isn't there?
There's quite a few, yes, but we don't like to force things on top of landowners, and as you say, there can be compensation involved, so we do have to be very careful with that, and we'd much rather do it with their agreement. So, yeah.
David?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to ask you a question about a walk that actually is, in the main, is in Annie's ward, but I'm sure be interested to both of us, and that is the Wye Valley Walk as far as it goes at the moment. I think it's a beautiful and iconic walk that has a certain history to it and all that sort of thing. Is there any plans for it to move on further than it is at the moment? Is it likely to go any further following the old path route, if you like?
Yeah, the Wye Valley Walk, as you probably know, managed through the Wye Valley Walk Partnership, which the Wye Valley A and B sort of convene, and obviously involves ourselves, Paris County Council as well, and a little bit of Gloucestershire as well, very small part. So, sorry, I should have said Herefordshire County Council as well. So there aren't any particular proposals to extend the scope. I mean, the walk does go from the source to the mouth of the river. The big issue on the Wye Valley Walk is about some of the very large infrastructure issues that exist on it. Redbrook Bridge, Lidbrook Bridge, the ex-railway bridges.
I think I might have called the name wrong.
Right.
It's the one that runs from Piercefield, you know, the cliff one.
Yeah, that is the Wye Valley Walk. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of got local loops and links as well, but that is the Wye Valley Walk. So the really big issue on the Wye Valley Walk is about putting together some of those larger infrastructure issues. There's quite a big issue south of Monmouth that stretch from the Monmouth Bridge back to the showground, where there's a very small gap effectively between the back of property and the river. We've had some engineering assessments done, but we were talking really significant amounts of money, you know, sort of 70, 80,000 plus, which is way beyond our capital programme. We've only got a capital programme of sort of, I think this year 38,000, which is sort of, you know, so we need to look to bring those sorts of things together into potential longer term grant bids. So that's what we're working with the partners on the Wye Valley Walk at the moment, is to try and identify those issues, but we're talking a multi-million-pound project in order to address all of those capital.
So within the improvement plan, when you're building this, all the major structures, everything that we foresee could become a problem with presenting the plan, they will be all listed in there. They've got to be listed in there because they may be an asset to us, but if we've got a walk or a path which is within that structure, that has to be made safe, and if we haven't got the funds or the monies to do that, you may end up closing paths, etc., or diverting paths, but we're still, so that will all come out in the report, will it? Because we could talk about all these paths for the next fortnight, but that will come out in the report, and I think that would be the time to say, actually, how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that, like, and it may be recommendations from the report, maybe we actually divert some of them structures, because if they're going to cost £250,000 or even millions to actually improve or carry out, that's going to be virtually impossible, isn't it?
Just to be clear though, I think the report, we're probably not envisaging it being much longer than the previous plan, which was only 50 pages, because, you know, it needs to be accessible. So this really is about setting a higher level strategy. All of the details you're talking about in terms of structures and bridges and surveys and whatever, all held on our countryside access management system. So we're not, I wouldn't envisage, we'll see what happens over the next 18 months, but I wouldn't envisage that the new plan will have, you know, a lot of path specific detail. It's going to be more about what are a broad sort of aspirations that we've got.
But I think as you move through your consultation, a lot of that's going to crop up, isn't it?
It will.
Like it's cropped up and we haven't even started yet. It's cropped up today, and I think that's important to make sure that we have all that in there. Then it may not be in there, but we have it ready for members and the communities out there, because they're going to ask that. They're going to ask that. They are very serious questions to ask, because if it means we have to close or divert paths because of the structures, you'll have a serious problem and big consultation on things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
time consuming.
Last time we did drop-in sessions in a number of communities across the county, so we'll probably do something similar again. So we will amass an enormous amount of detail, but then we'll obviously have to try and present that in a way that isn't, you know, hundreds of pages long.
Okay. Any more questions, Val, and then Tony?
Volunteers are very beneficial to us, aren't they? It seems to have been the feeling I've got is it's been restrictive what they could actually do. The use of chainsaws. If members of the public are volunteering and they're properly trained and accredited, are we happy to see them carrying on with those sort of works?
Yes, we are, definitely. We're doing a process at the moment, actually, with it's a cross-council process, which being done looking at volunteers more widely, and we're doing that with grounds and operations to look at precisely some of the stuff you're just talking about, and to look at the relationship between health and safety responsibilities, insurance, and what volunteers can and can't do, because there's been a certain amount of confusion around responsibilities, particularly for the groups like in your own ward, where you've got a group that is not, they're not directly volunteering for us, but we are giving them tasks to do. So the aim of that piece of work is to try to simplify the processes and try and absolutely maximise the potential for volunteers to do different things.
I can come back on that, Jim. Sort of within highways, there's yes, we can train you and you can probably, deal with your own potholes, which previously was unthought of. Can I ask another question, please, Chairman? Regarding cycle tracks, what's the relationship between pavements and cycle tracks and pedestrians? Because there's been a long ambition to get a track that actually, a cycle track or a cycle route from Pontypool to this establishment, and we could achieve it by using a length of pavement. So what are the rules and regs? We've never actually got defined this broad piece outside, and it is such a dangerous road, but generally,
I mean, there's quite a big overlap there between ourselves and Paul Keeble's team, because in terms of footways and cycle routes that run alongside roads, then they wouldn't be public rights of way generally. They'd generally be form part of the highway. I think there's a few exceptions to that, but generally speaking, the cycleways something that Paul's team looks after. But where we tend to get involved more in some of the, as you said, some of the off-road proposals. But even there, we may be potentially looking, because in some ways cycling doesn't fit very well into the historic status of public rights of way, because effectively it needs to be a bridleway in order to be legal to cycle on, although potentially Welsh Government are looking at that as part of their ongoing review of public rights of way.
there is a legal problem, is there, to actually promoting a pavement as also a cycleway? Because that's something that really needs clarifying, because a bit of common sense, and we can achieve that route from Pontypool to the college and to the headquarters here. And it is a shame to block it with a few hundred yards.
Yes, it is a legal problem, and they're quite difficult to overcome. Cycle track acts and things are quite complex, and we haven't done many in Monmouthshire. The actual ROIT process itself does require us to look at cycling as well as pedestrians and horse riders and four-wheel drive use. So we will be working quite closely with our highways colleagues to try and map out to find out where to look at the active travel plans and what they've done there. And if people reply in our assessments for our report and say they want cycle tracks, as you say, that the one to Usk, that's the kind of thing we need to know in our assessments, and we'll put them in there. And then we're trying to find ways of looking at that, not just in terms of physically providing it in the future, but also in terms of how do we address that as a council and move forward, map these things properly, and have a proper strategy for the council to look at these between countryside and highways as a total. So because the active travel, as you may know, goes from where there's a big urban population, but obviously people want to go further afield, and so we really need to be joining the dots up, and that's what we're aiming to do over the next few months. So let's watch this space.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Tony?
Just one brief one. When you made a presentation to us, say, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, downstairs, you had concerns about having to close some public rights of way, one particularly in Langua, where you had bridges and things which were not suitable or unsafe. Have we resolved these problems, or are we going to extinguish these footpaths? I don't know exactly what one, but it was a big concern you had at the time in maintaining public rights of way.
I mean, we still have a significant backlog of issues. We've got about 3,000, I think is about right, in terms of the numbers of issues that we've got in our system. I mean, they vary significantly. They could just be missing finger posts, but they could be, as the chairman has said, it could be a bridge that's going to cost, £500,000 or something. We were able to prioritise some of the more urgent cases after the meeting that we had, because last financial year we had an extra £30,000 as a sort of one-off additional capital expenditure, which helps us prioritise some of them. But we still do have a number of routes where we've had bridges closed, and we have a number of routes where we've closed or going to close bridges, where really we can't prioritise replacing them because it's that choice, if you like, between spending an enormous amount on one project or trying to spread that money over a larger number of smaller projects. So that there's always, I think, going to be that pressure.
But as a consequence, will we lose those rights away, or will they just lay dormant?
They generally lay dormant because we don't have the legal power to. You can't extinguish a right of way just because we haven't got the resources to. We have to go through a closure notice procedure.
Okay. David?
One very quick one, Chairman. I remember a few years ago being at a meeting which was all about tourism, etc., and the Wye Valley and the walks, etc. There was a plan at that meeting where the cycle path or walking path right the way down through from Ross on Wye, Simmons Yard, all the way down through Monmouth, etc., coming down towards Chepstow. And there was a plan that at Tintern Station, there would be a bridge built across there so that people actually could cross there and access Chepstow quite quickly. It would be, for Chepstow, it would be quite a good thing in terms of tourism. Is that now defunct, dead in the water, or is there any life in it? Is there anybody trying to keep it alive as a project?
Yeah, Sustrans withdrew from that scheme for various reasons, but I do understand that there's a new group that is now trying to develop that, a group based in Chepstow, possibly. But obviously most of that route is actually not in Monmouthshire, it's in Forest of Dean. It's only when you get to the bridge at Tintern that absolutely, yeah.
If you could find out who's in Chepstow for David and just email him, he could have the conversation, perhaps see where they are with it. That'd be handy. Any more questions?
One quick question. Closure of footpaths, it seems to be a huge problem. We can close a road, blah, blah, but to close a footpath seems to be another issue. Can you just explain really the procedure, please?
The procedures under the Highways Act 1980, which lays down how we must follow it, there are tests within that, and the only reason we can close a footpath is not needed for public use. So normally we look at extinguishing a path or closing a path at the same time as a diversion or creation of a path, and then they're more acceptable and they can run hand in hand, but they do run as two separate orders. So sometimes you do run the risk of, say, if you run a creation order and an extinguishment, the creation could go through, but the extinguishment might not. So it's always a bit of a juggle. But normally we do spend a lot of time in consultation and working with the landowners and user groups, and everyone would be consulted to make sure, as much as possible things can go through. We're never 100% sure because anyone can object anywhere in the UK, so you don't know if somebody's going to come out the woodwork. But normally, we're 99% sure that if we put an order through, we think it will go through.
Come back. I mean, a highway can be closed on a safety issue. Why can't a footpath be closed on a safety issue? Boom, But anyway, okay, that's obviously not the case.
We can close it in the interest of safety, but only for a 6-month period, and then we'd have to get Welsh Government approval.
I think there's all sorts legally with definitive maps. Is it on the definitive map? I've got to say, I had a telephone call off somebody last night, actually on something on this. Can I ask you a question? And it is a very important question for Monmouthshire and the people where I come from. The rumour has it that National Parks will be handing all paths to Monmouthshire County Council, which is in the boundary of Monmouthshire. Is that correct?
I can update you exactly on that because in fact that's what I was working on when I was sat at the back.
I'm glad I've asked it. How's that? I'm really psychic today.
Yeah. I mean, the starting position is that we are the highway authority for all of Monmouthshire, and so that all of the footpaths and structures in the whole of Monmouthshire, including the national park, are Monmouthshire County Councils, because it's the highway. It has a highway authority that we function, but we have had for a very long time a delegation agreement along with, I think, all of the other authorities that form part of the national park, to delegate certain activities relating to public rights of way to the National Park Authority. And that's principally been dealing with day-to-day inquiries, dealing with public path orders, and dealing with most maintenance tasks, but not all. The larger structures have always remained with Monmouthshire County Council. That agreement hasn't changed since 2000 and I don't know. I think before I started in 2003, so it was before then. That agreement hasn't changed. So the National Park Authority did give us and Powys and the other authorities notice to terminate that agreement at the end of this financial year. But we are now in the process of, that was part of their budget cuts, but then to a certain extent they rethought this and decided that there is benefit to them in continuing to be the first point of contact in terms of public rights of way, given their wider countryside access responsibilities. And so we're now currently renegotiating the potential for a new delegated agreement, which would come into effect from 1st of April next year. So we haven't bottomed that out yet. There's issues around. Obviously, the original agreement was written in another time, in a sense, in that we didn't have digitised mapping, we didn't have computerised systems and whatever. So we need to draw all of that together, and then and inevitably there's some financial pressure as well, because some of which is quite reasonable, because the contribution that we've made to that agreement hasn't changed for many, many years.
Okay, so what we're saying is we possibly may not be taking over the running of the footpaths with the national parks for the financial year coming, but part of that agreement will be a financial contribution to national parks for them to continue with looking after the paths within national parks. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Okay. Yeah, I think
the only reason why I'm asking that is I think this goes back to lots of things within having other organisations running things for you, is the joined ups thing about it all, i.e. when you do your improvement plan here, at least you'll have an idea where it's being joined up and you know to talk to. When you have cross-border things, i.e. you're going to, let's say we're talking about David's thing in Forest of Dean, i.e. most of it's lying within Forest of Dean, let's say that path, till it steps into Monmouthshire, it's not our responsibility. Even though you can join up and have the discussions. With, let's say, in brackets, the national parks, it is our responsibility, but we're paying them to look after that responsibility. But if we don't feel we're having, let's say, outcomes from paying them for responsibilities, where do we go from there? Because there's an issue for 20 years been arising in my ward, and my form was read out last night, and it's 20 years this has been going on, right? And it's still never been resolved. And I've been informed by the person who was probably not going to be there, now he's going to be there, that actually he's got a big pile on his desk there and it probably won't happen for many, many years. Now, actually, that's not very good for people in Monmouthshire, but we've given the responsibility to somebody else. And all I'm doing is, I'm on camera now, I'm speaking to the people of Monmouthshire. Why is it that actually we don't take hold of it ourselves and resolve or get hold of all the footpaths which lie within Gilwyn, Llanelli, Clydach, Gavilan and Llanfoist and Derryside, which is part of the, because it can't be that many. Would it not be easier to do that and not go the other way? Because nothing's been resolved, nothing's been done. Let me be true about that, because I'm led to believe there's going to be complaint being made about how this has been handled. Now, that don't look very good on us either, because it's Monmouthshire. You've just said it, they do belong to Monmouthshire, even though we're paying them to look after it for us. I'm only saying that because I want to know, would your definitive mapping and all your rights of way improvement include the ones which are in the parks? That's no now, is it? Or yes?
No, that's actually yes now.
Oh, well done.
It's a slightly complicated situation.
Oh,
The answer previous time round was definitely no, in that there was a separate rights of way improvement plan for the national park, and there was one for Monmouthshire that didn't include the national park. But the new guidance makes it clear that we are reviewing the rights of way improvement plan for the whole of Monmouthshire, including that part of the national park. Now, that doesn't preclude the national park from preparing their own rights of way improvement plan, and in fact they've informally indicated that that's what they wish to do, and we probably don't have any issues with that, but that their plan effectively comprises of the various parts of the Highway Authority's plans combined together. Now, obviously, that we're going to have to do that sensibly, because there's 8 different authorities and it needs to be wrapped together. I think the issue on prioritisation, because clearly what we can't say is if Monmouthshire were to take over all those paths, that all those problems would be solved, because they would just go on to our list of 3,000 issues. But the issue of prioritisation and being more cooperative about how we set work programmes, and potentially using grant and other means in a more cooperative way, is absolutely at the heart of the discussions that we're having over the new delegation agreement. I think, we had considered whether we could, as you say, just take over all of the paths. The issue for us is, particularly on the upland areas, something like the Lantony Valley, that introduces a whole new ball game in terms of landowners working in an upland situation, which we don't have any experience in doing that. We don't have the equipment, we don't have the vehicles, we have a very small... So our view is, and the National Park will continue to provide a ranger service that works with landowners. There's potential, if we went the other way, for there to be a lot of confusion, in that they'd be talking to landowners about access issues, but then we would have to go and deal with the rights of way issues. So on balance, we thought that it's probably best to try to continue the current relationship, but absolutely needs to be set into a more Monmouthshire scenario in terms of prioritisation. Yeah, absolutely.
Agreement with on maps, etc., with an outside or adjoining authority or adjoining body. There has to be terms of reference. Can you make sure that when we're carrying out this plan, and I see you put consultees there, national parks, but can we make sure that we get that right as well, making sure that what you've just said, because by the time you finish this, you're going to be probably into maybe looking after them.
Thank you. The LAF groups are LAF, the Local Access Forum groups in Brecon and in Monmouthshire meeting, aren't they, at certain times, which is going to be really useful, I think.
I hope so.
And we probably will need to set up some sort of either joint committee or some joint working group, so as we draw the two things together. But that's all very much on the agenda.
Right, okay. Any more questions? No. Thank you very much. So we'll endorse and let you get on with this, all right? And we'll look forward to seeing you, or some of us will. May not be us all, but some of us will look forward to coming back to us in the summer.
Sat there watching everyone else again. So we're moving on to another improvement plan. So these are our improvement objectives set in the improvement plan, which is set annually by council to deliver the council's priorities. They include a number of key actions and measures to track progress and actions to deliver the objectives. And the report contains the the progress against 2 of the objectives particularly relevant to Strong Community Select Committee. So that's attached to Appendix A is Improve Objective 4. We want to maintain locally accessible services, and that includes issues such as looking at a different way to deliver tourism, leisure, culture and youth services, the 6-month pilot of glass recycling, the delivery of the Rural Development Plan, and the establishment of the Community Hub in Abergavenny. The second objective, Objective 5, attached to Appendix B, is we want to be an efficient, effective and sustainable organisation, and that includes actions such as delivering council services in budget, producing the population assessment and a wellbeing assessment in line with new statutory duties under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, work on a new business model for the authority, implementing the workforce delivery plan, the people and organisational development strategy, and taking action in respect to reports from our regulators. And then Appendix C contains some key national performance indicators that fall within the committee, and some of these are repeated in the objectives above. So the recommendations as the chair's outlined. I'm conscious the report covers a diverse range of areas. I'll try and answer the questions the best I can. It may be that we need to ask some of those responsible to come back to you, and it may be something you may wish to pick up on future agenda items or work programme items in the future. I know some of these are already on your work programme already or planned. So happy to take any questions on the first report.
Okay, any questions? Tony?
Thank you, Chair. Improvement Objective 4, maintaining locally accessible services. Do you believe that, or I believe maybe that Appendix 4, Objective 4, sorry, should include transport services, connections of communities, rail services, and bring them all together. We in the county are losing bus services. We're not getting all the rail services we want to the south end of the county. There are question marks about the metro system, whether it's going to be that way or that way. The First Minister went to Brussels to try and get 100 million quid this last couple of days to try and improve the system. So do you feel that Improvement Objective 4 should include all these facets which are important to people in the county, because we are losing them at a rapid pace?
Okay, so I think obviously very important issues. I think this is the purpose of the improvement. Sorry? I think the importance of the improvement objectives are set to deliver some of the key actions, and this is particularly a continuation of areas that have been set in 2015-16. I say it's approved by council, so everyone gets the chance to actually feed into what actually forms the content of the objectives. What I would say though is, I mentioned it in the cover report, that we're now moving forward under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act to select wellbeing objectives for the council. At the moment we're taking assessment of wellbeing that will cover social, economic, environmental and cultural aspects of the council, and this is likely to be the final year that the objectives are set in this way as we take on the issues under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. There's an opportunity there to reflect on the areas of need in the county and potentially bring in some of those broader areas. I know some of the responses you already had from consultation, feedback, a lot of those are areas which people in the community are already telling us are important to be featured. So that's our council wellbeing objectives. Also we heard this morning talking about the Public Service Board's role as well. So obviously they'll have a wider role of setting their own wellbeing objectives by April 2018. So again, some of those wider issues which you've outlined can form part of them. But I think the improvement plan is very much on some specific activity the council is taking in this year that's being delivered, which is why the actions are taken in there have been set the way they are as approved by council.
Okay. Could I take you to the waste one there? As you know, that's part of our portfolio. I see we're up to well over 70% now of recycling within the authority. That's provisional, Q2 provisional, and that's without actually the scheme in hand at the moment, which they've got. The trial is the glass. That's not including that because there's no data for that yet at the moment, is there? There can't be any data because it only just started a month ago, and we've got Q2 here, which is probably up to September, isn't it? Yeah. So that didn't start till David.
Chairman, there has been some comment that the trial isn't going particularly well with problems in theatre.
Okay, they're coming back to us. No, I am aware of things, but they're coming back to us. The point I'm making is we've actually stepped our target up, right? We're up to 70-odd% now, nearly 70, just over 70%. And I heard that in Cabinet yesterday. And that's not including this trial. So if the trial was successful, it may even rise. If it's not, but we were 70%. And that was actually using the black bag. That wasn't using the grey bag, because we did away with the black bag, didn't we? So the grey bag isn't included in this. So it's what we've started with April. So we have seen an increase. Now, how has that increase been achieved? Is it because of the recovery from, the energy from waste plant, and we're having a percentage from that given for our target? Is that where this extra percentages come from? Because we've gone from a target of 66 to actually have well over 4.5% increase. That is a massive increase, I believe, from no change.
Yeah.
How has that been achieved? I'm just a bit dubious from what I hear, and that goes from the initial statement of opening up from the minutes, with the MRF, with the MRF, with having 10 to 12% rejects. I'm just it's a little bit fuzzy for me. How has that been achieved by reaching that target?
I'm probably not based to give you the full answer. I'll talk about it in terms of obviously the information provided for the report.
Yeah.
Talks about obviously continued cooperation of residents is vitally important to maintain that. It does talk about obviously the energy recovery of all Monmouthshire's residual household waste now being undertaken. And I think also important to note that it's expected that rate as we go into the winter months of the year will decline due to, as it says in the report, the collection of compostable garden waste reducing during the winter months. So the recycling rates expect to go down. The provisional figure there is based on the period from July to September. So I think it's probably a question that you may want to ask when that report comes back to understand it, or I can indeed take that away and ask for a further explanation to come back. So I wouldn't want to...
Can I give you some data analysis to carry out for us then? '16th of the 1st. Next year they're coming back to us. That'll be the time that you are loaded with your questions to... that's when they're coming back. There is the trial at the moment. They'll be reporting back to us, hopefully on the 16th.
Where I was going, Chairman, was that
All right, I understand your concerns, and I'm sure there are other members got them concerns as well. Tony?
Yeah, I do. I support the comments that Dave are making about the concerns we got. But I don't know whether you've been watching television programs recently. For example, Conwy County has gone to a 4-weekly refuse collection to try and drive up the recycling. There seems to be problems in people's perception on what they recycle and how they recycle it, which comes back to the Welsh Government's policy that really they would like to go back to curbside sort. I think this collection of glass in Tried and Abergvenny is the midway to get in our current system in parallel with what might be considered to be a curbside sort, to make sure the glass is kept separate. So I think we should go along with the trial, see what it's all about. Yes, there's been concerns about the transporting of the stuff. Let's hope that by the end of next month they'll have got to the bottom of it, and maybe we can get some answers for David as well in terms of competition.
I think I was just touching on the 70% there and etc. But remember, when we had the sewers in here, they told us our rejection rate at the MRF, and that stuff which is in the purple and red sacks is 10 to 12% rejection. And I pictured that when I went from here, and I thought, every 10 bags sitting there, one is rejected. And I can't understand, every 100 bags you put in that wagon, 10 are rejected. Now, he did say that items in them bags aren't recyclable. Well, I've got to say, when you look at, and he mentioned plastics, it's the most lightest thing you'll ever have. And I can't, and I'm just putting this 2 and 2 together here, 70%, and if you cut it in half to 5 or 6%, we could have a recycling rate there of more or less 75, 76%. But we're having such a large rejection rate at the MRF, and I can't understand why. Our guys are quite keen when they pick bags up. You know, they leave them if there's anything heavy in there they're not happy about. So I was a little bit, I'm a little bit dubious now. 2 and 2 is adding to 5 for me somewhere on all that. But going back to the data that we've got with us today now on here, I think that's very, very close to being the benchmark that we need to hit in 10 years' time, is it? Was it 2025? 2025? So actually we're there now. So if we had a tweak in the MRF, the benchmark that we needed to hit for the Welsh Government, we'd actually be there, no problem whatsoever. So what I can't understand is why we're fiddling around with other things which could actually knock it back down again. I don't get my head round it, and I'm mixed up, and other members are really, they question me then, they're really mixed up with all this. So I think it's something, I'll let you come in, but it's something we need to discuss on the 16th. I think that's the input, that's the debate, not today. I think the 16th is the debate on it. Okay?
Thank you for letting me come back, Chairman. I'm really just trying to prepare our ground for the next meeting, if you like. No more than that. But as I recall, what to the people from Suez, happy memories of Suez, don't we, all of us? Anyway, what I recall from what he said, it was that the Chinese wanted the glass now in bigger pieces or something, not in terms of it being crushed down. And that was a comment that was made there. You know, well, come on, there's only so much we can do, especially when it's being done on on the side of the road, if you
Okay.
like.
We'll have the conversation on the
Yeah.
16th. I think what you should be doing, writing these things down, David, because I know when I come out of some of the meetings, I kick myself thinking I
Yeah,
should have
no,
asked things. So,
I know,
okay.
Chairman.
Have we anything else now on this? No? Right, can we go to the next report, Richard, please?
So next report is to provide members with an update of the strategic risk facing the council as part of the committee's ongoing scrutiny of the council's risk assessment. The risk assessment ensures that strategic risks are identified and monitored by the authority. Risk controls are appropriate and proportionate, and senior managers and elected members systematically review strategic risks facing the authority. The risk has been updated based on the evidence available so far in 2016, in line with the council's risk management policy. High and medium level strategic risks are captured on the risk register. Lower level risks are managed through team service plans or project specific risk registers. So today, particularly asking members to focus on the risks that fall within the responsibility of strong communities, although the whole risk assessment is provided for wider context, and particularly look at ensure that the relevant risks are captured, the level of risk is appropriate, and that the mitigating actions are proportionate, appropriate, in order to successfully mitigate the risk. The risks that are relevant to the committee in particular are risk 8 around capacity in the workforce, risk 9A around community governance arrangements, risk 10 around the recycling service. There's some joint risks in there, the responsibility of strong communities and other committee. The new risk that's been added around the risk potential services of Britain leaving the European Union, and capital budget and the capital programme, as well as a number of areas that will fall across all select committees and audit committees remit as well. So particularly asking to take any members' feedback. This will go to the other committees before going on to Cabinet for approval. And again, you may want to use some of these areas to inform some of your further work in the future if it's not ready planned.
Okay, Tony?
Yeah.
At the moment, in terms of, so is it sickness again, was it? Sorry? So, yeah. So in terms of sickness, we saw an increase last year to 11.6 days per employee, which was quite high compared to other councils in Wales as well. At the 6 month stage year, we've seen that come down to 10.06. However, based on previous trends, we're expecting that probably to rise through the winter months of the year. So it could be similar to levels previously achieved. The risk identifies sort of the importance, let's get it up now. So risk identifies the importance of the pressures on the workforce at the moment and the action that's being taken around the people and organisation development strategy. Progress reports I know come to the committee frequently in terms of the action that's being taken to try and reduce risk, both previously and any new action being implemented based on the new data that comes available each quarter on sickness levels.
What level of that 10.8 is down to stress? Because I pick up Sophie's on stress, somebody else on stress, somebody else with stress.
So in terms of from the 11.6, which was the 15-16 figure, analysis indicated about 21% of sickness was due to psychological reasons. It's one of the most significant areas in terms of sickness. Yeah.
I think we've got a report coming to us springtime, Tony, on this. Yeah, there's one coming to us. Yeah, and I think audit have picked this up as well, haven't you, on the sickness and sickness. Yeah, David.
Yes, Chairman. I've raised this in other places as well. I am concerned about the level of people that we have, and some people that you would have thought were pretty well nigh bomb-proof in terms of their performance and well, the sort of people that they are. And it isn't only the fact that, and it is the major fact that these people are finding themselves under this sort of stress and are off work. It is the fact that quite a large number of these people, as I can see it, are in pretty influential positions within the county. They do key jobs. And what I would suggest is that their numbers have an incrementally bigger effect on the council in terms of providing the service that it needs to do. You know, we don't have to go into names, but I could name a couple very easily that I wish were back at work at the moment, because I have no means of dealing with some problems which are within my ward. And so I think we are. It's a bit of a moral question, but I also think we are getting to a point where these cutbacks are going to be counterproductive. And that really does concern me, because at the end of the day, we have to provide the basic services. And I think we're getting closer to the point that we're not being able to do that. And I think that is mirrored in the fact that as councillors now, I feel besieged by emails about God knows what topics in the world. There seems to be this great increase in activity in that area of what we're doing. And I suspect that is because we don't have soldiers on the ground, if you like. And that is beginning to come our way. Now, emails are not the love of my life, to be truthful, but I think we're getting into a stage of imbalance. I've never been in a position in any job I've had where that is similar to this.
I think
where
what
this is getting out of kilter. That's really.
I think what you're trying to say, Councillor Dovey, is you feel a little bit insecure because you actually probably feel like the residents now, where they turn to you and then you turn to somebody else, and actually when you're turning to somebody else, you actually got nobody to turn to. And I think most of us are feeling like that. But I think the key risks that are marked here is sickness, is actually probably going down the lines of what you're saying here. I think yesterday's reports in Cabinet were a big highlight of where we've gone on the journey, and actually the journey has come to a stop. And we've realised that we have to actually get off the bus and get back on it again, because reorganisation of departments is happening again, i.e. taking people on and reorganisation of departments. I think yesterday was a bit of an eye-opener for me, the amount of people which are going to be employed back into the authority, because we can't cope. We cannot cope.
Well,
and I think that is telling us we cannot cope.
Well,
and it needs that to tell us.
We didn't need that to tell us.
No, we didn't. No, I
didn't need
agree. I
that.
agree.
I've got to say, Chairman, there is a lot of councillors across all parties that just were not listened to over what was going on. And we could, I don't know about Tony, but I could see with the requirements of what I needed in my ward that there wasn't the resource there to deal with it. And the other thing, which is a simple thing that I can't believe, everybody has got a title now that actually doesn't give you a basic clue as to what the hell they do. I mean, that is the other thing. You get a really sexy title and you think, well, what they do? Where is the guy that deals with cutting down trees?
Let's have that discussion when that report comes to us. I think it's so important.
Yeah, well.
And I honestly, I don't think now is the time to have that discussion, but I think everybody feels the same. I think the report, the key risk is telling us that we are suffering, and you've marked it in there, and it is marked there. We've had the discussion. I think the spring will be the time when we find out where we are. And we're all going to set a budget soon, so let's see what's going to happen within that budget.
Yeah.
Because that's important. It's all right to say we're not going to do this, but many of us put our hands up to agree the budget, and many of us argue against the budget for whatever reason. So I think the report, the key risk is, yes, we've got a risk there. Exactly what you're going down. We could debate, I could sit in here all day and have that discussion with you. I think
just wanted to make the point strongly, Chairman.
I know, I know you do.
I know you have some
I know, and I
sympathy
quite
with it,
agree with you, but
I wanted it
I know.
to...
I'd like to have the discussion on the key factors of it's a very high risk if we leave Europe. There's a very high risk to the authority if we leave in Europe. Where's the evidence? Give me the evidence. Who's put that in there then? Who's give us the evidence that is a key risk to this authority? That when we leave Europe, it's a high risk. Because I don't know. Why is that a key risk?
What's identified there is it's the risk to council services when we leave Europe. So the evidence that has been put forward in the risk register is around the uncertainty that could impact on local government finances, which could also impact on regional projects such as the City Deal. Many council services are governed by EU legislation or follow EU-led policy. For example, procurement rules, so there could be uncertainty while the process of exiting the UK is in place.
I'm sure the Prime Minister promised us that we'd actually be running on the same kind of finance and... I honestly, I don't know who's put all that in there, but if there's evidence-based, I'd say fair enough, but I haven't seen the evidence yet, and I think what you've probably got is you've probably got something in there which has been included, because if you could give me the data to say how much Monmouthshire County Council receives from Welsh Government, which is EU, let's say, funding, and there's a possibility that we'd lose a large percent. I quite agree with you. I've got no issues with that, but there's no evidence, is there?
I think
the evidence to me is the fact that the point you made is political uncertainty. That is a sort of unknown evidence, but it's the political uncertainty that causes. That is where the sort of evidential train will run. That's the way I see it. Whether you voted to stay in, jump out, or whatever. It has left a political uncertainty on the round, and I think that is the element you're trying to say.
But there's political uncertainty with every budget we have as well, isn't there? And we never highlight that, do we? It's a key risk. So we're saying we're going to lose the £1 million in recycling, which we don't really know about, do we? That is a key risk to me as an authority, whether the Welsh Government give it us or not. That's a key risk. But
yeah,
if that came in there as a key risk to authority leaving Europe, is the money from Europe for recycling goes to Welsh Government and may not be able to have that money, I see that as a key risk.
In terms of strategic risk, it's reflecting the uncertainty that brings. Some of those factors are no doubt without our control, but some of those things will come back down and influence council services down political level. So it's reflecting there the fact there is uncertainty at the moment. And for our strategic risk register, looking at strategic risk, it is a key strategic risk to further understand what the risks will actually be in the first place as those decisions are taken. So I think it's right that it's flagged up in there, and as that evidence becomes available, as things become clear about the process, and as that becomes clear about the impact that will have on council services, we will update the risk to reflect that. I think because there's so much uncertainty at the moment, it's the right thing to reflect it in the risk register. I take the points on board from the committee being made, but I think that's the purpose of it being in there, is the uncertainty it creates that needs to be managed, and as specific evidence becomes available, that can be reflected in there, and the risk can become further and more defined.
Mind you, the council supported.
Okay. Anything else, Tony?
Yeah, I say the council didn't support your view last week when I raised this sort of thing in a different context.
Let's see the evidence.
Okay.
The problem with the uncertainty, Chairman, comes from the fourth estate, which is having an absolute field day at the moment.
I know. I don't know. Let's move on. It's down to key risk. We we accept that it has to be in there. If there was evidence based around that, it's a big umbrella, so it's just strange. There's more about that than probably a lot of the other things which are key risks. Right, okay. Thank you for that. Anything else on that? No? Oh, one quick question. Can we actually highlight that then as I just find it, is the report different to usual? Reference to colouring, and I thought we used to have some kind of colouring in there. Just it's there at the bottom, isn't it? But at the bottom, but you used to actually put them in there, didn't you? Yeah, you put the colours at the side of it, didn't we? Doesn't matter. I was looking for the colours, like flicking through it, as reference to portfolios, i.e. the waste and the Europe thing, and okay. You see where I'm going?
Yeah, we used to do that, to make it clear what the risk levels are.
That's right. That'd be better. Okay, anything else? No? Thank you. Thank you. Richard? Got it right that time. Alan Burkitt, good afternoon. I was going to say good evening then. Let me just put you up on the screen, Alan, just a second. Let me get you here.
There's no mistake in this particular officer's post. It's quite clear to me.
He's what? Right, let me just read through the recommendations that we're asking to be endorsed this afternoon, not this evening. That Strong Communities Select scrutinise the 5-year strategy, that the committee annually monitor progress in order that we achieve our targets. The report will be forwarded to Cabinet on the 20th of January for formal adoption. Okay, and before I open that up, Alan, I mentioned in Cabinet yesterday, there's a lot of reports come to Select, and real serious reports, and then they go to Cabinet, but the Select minutes or the questions asked in Select, I believe, and I'm sure the Cabinet agreed, this should be included in the minutes for the Cabinet report, because we could go to Cabinet, we could ask the same questions which have been asked in Select, and we don't actually know what went on in that Select if you're not on it, and there may be some real serious questions in there. You can perhaps, in Cabinet, just open up a little bit more. So, as a trial, if you're allowed, could we actually include that you've come to Select and members, these is what they ask the questions, etc. Because this is perhaps a small one. Can we work on that one, perhaps?
Chair, it is actually done for some reports. It kind of depends on the report author actually including the Select's comments before they take it to Cabinet. So some officers are doing it, but you are right, it's not, we haven't got consistent practice across the board.
I think the main one for me was CMC Squared being closed. It did go to economic development. I would like to see all the questions which economic development asked. It wasn't there, which was a shame really, but that's just an example. So it's something we can work on as officers, and I think this is probably an easier one to do, to go to Cabinet, and if anybody asks questions, great. If they don't, great still, isn't it? Right, just run us quickly through it, Alan, please.
Yeah, sure. Right, yes, thanks so much, Chair. This is the 5-year Welsh Language Strategy. It's one of the requirements of the Welsh Language Standards, 2011, and specifically Standard 145, and then 146 is reporting back on that strategy at the end of the 5-year period. It includes Monmouthshire's vision, so we had to come up with a vision for the language for the next 5 years. And ours is, within the report, it says that building on the legacy, hosting the Steddfod in this year in Abergavenny, in Monmouthshire, the Welsh language is live and dynamic, and this is the sort of position statement for 2022. This is what we would like to see. The language is live and dynamic. People can interact with the council through the medium of Welsh. More opportunities to engage in activities through the medium of Welsh, through the council providing them. More children are educated through the medium of Welsh, and there are wider opportunities to learn the language. So essentially it's looking at us to increase the number of Welsh speakers within Monmouthshire. And interestingly, we've gone along that path. 2011, only Monmouthshire and Cardiff had an increase in Welsh speakers in the whole of Wales. So that's very heartening, and hopefully that we can continue that sort of journey. Yeah, nice places to live, yeah. So that's the vision. If I just, bear with me a second, if I can scroll down to how can we do this. So, appointment of Welsh-speaking staff to key posts will highlight the council as a Welsh language employer of choice. This may give the opportunity for people from Cardiff, Newport, etc. to start thinking of us as an authority that employs and gives opportunity to Welsh speakers, whereas, really speaking, in the past, we haven't been so. Great opportunities for children to learn the language in the county. We've got two junior schools. We've got the new school now in Newport, and obviously we've got our partner at Gwyntlew in Pontypool. Providing staff the opportunity to attend Welsh classes. This is about us increasing our stock of Welsh speakers. So actively encouraging staff to learn Welsh online with Say Something Welsh or Duolingo, or like Councillor Eason, who's learning Welsh through a partner organisation, Adult Education. Working closely then with our partners, Mentor Iaith, who are based locally in Pontypool, the Earth, the Welsh Language Commissioner, Welsh Government, Coleg Gwent, the Health Board, and neighbouring councillors to normalise and give opportunities to both learn and use the language, both in work and socially. I think the really important one, again, is about if we're educating children through the Medium Welsh and we're allowing adults to learn the language in later life, in this particular county as such, giving them great opportunity to access that language and access services and courses through the Medium Welsh. It's really important if you're learning the language, of course, that you've got the opportunity then to use it. If you don't use it, you can lose it. Harnessing the energy and goodwill of the local fundraising committees to raise the use of the language. Thousands of people got together, Welsh speakers and non-Welsh speakers, to welcome the Eisteddfod to the area, raised £200,000 plus for the Eisteddfod. That goodwill is still out there, and I think it's harnessing that to get the language more normalised. So next on the list then is the targets, and we've been very careful to try and make these achievable. And we've linked in here very closely with the Welsh Education Strategic Plan, the WESP. That's something that's currently out to consultation. It's nearing the end of consultation. I've pulled some of the action points from there. I think it's really important that we've got the strength of education to pull this particular strategy along. So we're looking to increase the number of fluent Welsh-speaking staff in the council, the number of staff learning Welsh, the percentage of children in Monmouthshire and young people educated through the medium of Welsh. I won't go through all the statistics that are there in the document. It's increasing rates of transition as well from Key Stage 2 to 3. So it's making secondary education more accessible for people in Monmouthshire, which is a difficult challenge because of the rurality of the area and the geographical sort of disparity of where people are living in this county. And the final one, increasing the percentage of young people in Monmouthshire leaving school with bilingual skills. I think that's a really important one because there are an awful lot coming out with Welsh language skills, and are we as a council then encouraging them to look for employment through the medium of Welsh? And then we've got a comprehensive action plan to underpin this. This strategy ties very neatly in with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which has got a very strong emphasis on Welsh language and culture and specific examples of what they want us to do. Obviously, we've got the Welsh Education Strategic Plan, the WESP, a 3-year strategy, which is going to set the sort of stall for our education provision over the next 3 years and further ahead. We've got the More Than Words strategy, Mwy na Geiriau, social care strategy from Welsh Government, which is an important one for first language Welsh speakers, about having their care through the medium of Welsh, which is important for somebody elderly that may have dementia, that they reverted to their original language of Welsh, that we've got to be able to communicate with them and make them feel more comfortable in times of anxiety. The 1 million Welsh speakers in 2050 strategy that's come from Welsh Government, a very challenging strategy, but obviously if that's going to be achieved, we've got to be part of that, and this will hopefully feed into that. And once again, mentioning the background of the massively successful Eisteddfod, actually it's led to a lack of Welsh tutors in Monmouthshire at the moment because there's so many classes and the language is in such demand, which is fantastic to hear. It doesn't make it any easier for us to provide Welsh language classes, but it's a fantastic sort of example of how Eisteddfod's sort of get that excitement going. Consultations ending on the 16th of December. So far, we've had half a dozen or so responses from Welsh speakers, all very supportive and agreeing in these in our targets being sensible and achievable. One person came back saying they weren't, in his opinion, not particularly challenging or not challenging enough. he wanted more children educated through the medium Welsh, another school in Monmouthshire, and more teachers able to teach the language. I suppose it's probably what's going to come out of the WESP in many senses. But so far, and I will be re-advertising this consultation, and hopefully we'll get more positive responses. And if we get any responses that we feel worthy of putting into this and amending the document, then we'll do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alan. Any questions?
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. The list of consultees, you've got a lot of Welsh organisations here, Welsh speaking obviously. Public consultation exercise, who did you consult with otherwise, please?
Yeah, we've done that bilingually through the council's website. We've done it on Facebook and Twitter as well. So we've probably gone more in terms of the social media way. But also we've got quite a large database of people that were involved with the Eisteddfod. And I've encouraged them to send to friends, both English speaking and Welsh speaking, because it's very important that Welsh speakers support this particular move as well as Welsh speakers.
It's also, I would have said that it's possible a bit inclusive. It's not wide enough with other people to actually know about this consultation.
I think
I mean, obviously these people are all going to support it, aren't they? I like to see the both sides of the story.
Yeah, I think you're probably right in saying they were supported. I think that some would probably, as this one gentleman said, he doesn't feel they're strong enough. That with the consultation, we've primarily used sort of partners we've used in the past, and certainly in terms of with our Welsh language strategies and schemes in the past. These are the, and they will challenge as much as English speakers will challenge us. They may be a more positive challenge. I agree with you there, but certainly in going out through Twitter and Facebook and through other channels like that, we will get challenges. You know, if challenges will come back, they'll come back either positive or negative. And we've advertised it, and it's been advertised in the paper as well. So I don't know how we can make it any bigger a sort of spread on that.
You wouldn't suggest community and town councils are going down that sort of level of communication?
It's a very good question. Just bear with me a second. Let me just check the. Just check that a minute. Oh, I've got the wrong thing there. I'll check on that one. That's a good question. I'll check on the consultees. It's not too late to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Councillor Easton?
Yeah, I'm surprised that the percentage of Welsh speakers
I'm surprised to see that the percentage of Welsh speakers, or those partially Welsh speakers, and those who speak, read and write, are very similar to what are in Llantilio Cresceni, for example, or the north of the county, close to the Powys border, where we've got a Welsh-speaking county councillor. I'm surprised that their figures are not as high there as they are here. As high. I got it wrong. They're greater in the south than it is at the north. Because Councillor Jones is a fluent Welsh speaker.
That's right. Yeah, I think the bigger concentration of Welsh speakers are in the areas now where the schools are. So we've got a School of Eni, obviously in that area. Then they're pulling in kids from that area. I mean, not a small proportion of the parents are Welsh speakers, but still the parents send the children to Welsh medium education. Certainly Abergavenny area, I think, is the biggest concentration, and there's a concentration then around Caldicot, obviously, with the Ysgol y Ffin there.
May I ask a question, Alan? Yeah. Reference to the education side of this. We're looking to drive up Welsh speakers, so that means families who will be looking for their children to go to Welsh education medium schools. Or do we have the capacity there in the next 5 or 6 years for that to happen? Because it's okay to drive something forward and integrate it into our younger generation, which is happening. Great. I go to my local schools, and schools are doing fabulous work on the Welsh curriculum side of it. But if families decide, I want my children to go to medium Welsh or whatever, do we have the capacity?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I think I think you can see where the drive is, because the figures there in terms of education come from the strategic plan, the WESP. And I know that there are concerns in terms of potentially Abergavenny being full in the next 5-6 years. I think over the next 3 years they're okay, but there may be issues in the foreseeable future. I think that at the moment there's a consultation that's going on in asking parents if they are considering their children going to Welsh medium. So I think we're going to find some element of demand there, and probably that will feed into those possible areas of concern.
Because we have a rising population, as you know, whatever people want to say is we're going to have a problem with the numbers in the next 5-10 years with children, to make sure that they can go to the schools they want to go to. But the Welsh one, for me, is significant. I think should be important in your report, marking out really. You need to be thinking ahead over your 5 years, but making it in there that actually you've noted it now, that if we drive this agenda forward more and more, we could end up coming up against a blank wall, all the hard work, because we need to think ahead. Okay?
I entirely agree with you. I think that the West looks at a period of 3 years, and I think over the 3-year period, I think things are okay. But I think in conversation we've had in the sort of steering forum, that we've always been picked out, that the problem isn't going to be the next 3 years, it's actually potentially the demand of the next 5-6 years. So it could be the next West that comes in, and all of a sudden you've got that issue. So I think you're absolutely right to pick that out. I think it's something that probably the consultation will bring out, and that we as an authority need to consider.
Okay. Tony, last one. Oh, sorry, David.
It's to do with
Last one.
Yes, I'm nervous about the use of the word drive the thing up. I don't think that's appropriate. I think we should be seeking to meet the demand, the natural demand for people who wish to speak Welsh. I think I could say that because half of my family still live in Wales and whatnot, and still come from a 50% Welsh background, if you like. I'm concerned about the drive, in fact, in education. Education should seek to meet the demand. It shouldn't be creating a demand that it is then going to fill, if you see what I mean. And the other thing that it comes to me, because, well, one of the times which was pretty enlightening for me was when I went in, I had to go into the Gwent and see a specialist and whatnot, and he and I spent some time, and he looked as if he was being run ragged, you know, to be frank. And he was complaining, he was complaining about the problem that they had attracting people into this South East Wales anyway, South Wales probably, to fulfill roles in the hospital. And he was saying that the people that could be, they wanted to come in from other countries, India, wherever, when they come here and they are faced with the fact that their children might have to learn Welsh, they don't choose to settle because they speak a minority language already, right, which relates to their own land, which is important. Secondly, the parents are in the main fluent English speakers, and they want the children to follow that, and they want the children to learn a more commercial language than Welsh, which gives them better career opportunities. Now that isn't me making those points, but that was a professional man who'd given it a lot of thought, and he was at the front end of working hard. Now, Welsh is the last and oldest commercial language. You know, I can't speak it, and I'll be honest, I have no desire to wish to speak it. But I applaud the fact that it's still here, and it should, where people want to learn it, they should be encouraged and there should be facility for them. But I don't think people should be driven to. And I think some of the ways that the Welsh language is being deployed, when you phone up somewhere or other like that, you are...
It's all going, isn't it?
You...
Roger, can you just give us 1 minute on this?
Oh, different, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad.
So funny, I've forgotten where I was. Oh, I know. The way it is used in
David,
some
let's get to the nitty gritty here.
Yeah,
I think Councillor Dove is trying to say is he thinks the word drive is what word would you think would be more suitable then? Encouraged.
I don't think drive isn't mentioned in this document.
It was being used between the conversation between you, so I thought you were...
Okay, well, that's just a figure of speech then, isn't it?
No, well,
yeah, okay.
yeah, well,
so it's not in the document. That's just that. So well, that's good.
I'd just like to know, is this going to Cabinet on the 20th of January?
Yes.
Friday? Because I just thought it was a bit... I just need to make sure that it's the right day, because I would be interested.
16th of January. December.
The 16th of December?
There's one next week.
But this is going... January? The 20th is a Friday. And I thought that was unusual for Cabinet to meet on a Friday. Paula will tell us all.
Meeting next week, Cabinet, 26th. Next 16th.
The consultation.
11th of January, Cabinet.
11th. So you haven't got a lot of time there, Alan, have we?
Glad I made the point then, perhaps.
And then the 1st of February.
So it's the 11th of January for this presentation. Yeah?
11th of January is my transport group.
Bye.
And it's Cabinet.
11th of January. For
And the 1st of February, and then the 15th of February.
Right.
Which is a special.
Can we conclude when that's going to go to Cabinet, Alan? Then we
Yes, please.
On Councillor Webb's point about consultation.
Thank you.
Cabinet members' decision.
Yes.
We're happy to take that forward.
Yes.
I think the issue with the schools, I think, is a major one. We'd like
That's
from
good.
Select that pointed out within the report, or to Cabinet, that Select were concerned that the way forward is we need to make a point. Was there anything else there?
No.
No, I think that was it.
Thank you.
I'm going to be in the minority, I know that.
No, you're not.
David Jones and I
Hmm.
argue about it all the time in the nicest way.
Jones is, he was a Welsh teacher, wasn't he? Right,
Okay.
let's get on to Strong Communities Work Programme. It's straightforward, everyone. That's all in there. And then you've got the Cabinet Planner and Council, Cabinet and Council Forward Work Programme. Everything's fine with that one, yeah?
What about the response to what is left in email?
For the capital market, I think I'm going to actually probably wait till after Christmas for that one, Tony. Hazel's just give me a quick note, she's starting to pop out. We've got the 16th of January for the glass coming back to us. That's the scrutiny of the waste one.
2 o'clock.
16th.
At 2 o'clock, yeah.
2 o'clock, isn't it? Right, I've got my diary there. And that'll be on recycling. And the one after that is the budget scrutiny. And the other things which have been raised today, she will build into the plan, Hazel said. So everything we have there, the capital market, the street lighting, we will keep them on the agenda.
What was the next one after the 16th?
The budget meeting, I haven't got my diary, David, but I'm sure the clerk will let us know. Right, can I thank you for your time, and I'm sorry that we've just got to keep getting through everything we have here. It's not as always straddling, and it's just that we have so much, and it's not going to ease up either.
The next meeting after the special on the 16th, which is, as I say, the recycling review, which is Strong Communities with all members invited, is the 26th of January. And then obviously that will be budget.
That's the budget meeting,
Yeah.
26.
Yeah, that's in the diary, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Safe journey home, and Merry Christmas. Thank you.
How did I see you between now and Christmas?
your email it out and don't forget your phone. Do you want to take it with you and take it back office?
She here or she gone?
You saw it would have done.
If you could raise her.
Well, I've seen women's handbags before, but never the laptop in her.
I might be able to ring her off the phone.
If you could raise her.
There we are.
Is it right phone?
And a roof tile.
Or she'll have a code lock on it.